Welcome to Mindshock True Crime. This is your host, Bruce McGuire. You are listening to the Columbine Conspiracy Series. This is Episode 9, Brian Sargent. If you haven't checked out the previous episodes, make sure you check them out. We've gone over Robert Perry, the number one named shooter / suspect that dozens and dozens of witnesses have said they saw. Now, again, I wasn't there. I'm not hallucinating to know something is true or untrue, like the coincidence theories do. But other individuals, of course, we've gone over Joe Stair and Chris Morris. But the next most popular individual, the most named individual after all those guys, is Brian Sargent. A guy rumored to have a very violent temper. A guy who does not match the description of either Eric Harris or Dylan Klebold. This is the short, heavy-set individual of the Trenchcoat Mafia. So to hallucinate that he could have been mistaken for Dylan or Eric, I mean, I don't want to appeal to incredulity, but these guys, with Robert Perry and Chris Morris, you could theoretically make a case, tall, lanky, from a distance. With Brian Sargent, it's much more difficult. The mental gymnastics have to be at near Olympic level in order to try to spin this away. Doesn't stop the coincidence theories from trying. But again, I'm not insinuating Brian Sargent was directly involved in any way. Just he may possibly have been around when shooting occurred and it was covered up for some reason. So we will be going over many, many accounts. And Brian Sargent's own account, Alibi, and all of the funny business associated with this so-called investigation in one of the most infamous school shootings in history. This is the Columbine Conspiracy. If you want to support Mindshock, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Help us get more mind-shocking content with logic and reason at the forefront as we investigate many true crime cases, conspiracies, and various topics of all kind without falling for these logical fallacies that seemingly every other channel and the mainstream media clings desperately to. You could also become a member on YouTube. We have YouTube memberships now. We will be having exclusive member streams and chat rooms for those more well-versed in the cases they follow, so we don't have to constantly go over the basic information for newer listeners, which is, of course, important too, but that's what the main podcasts are for, so you could also become a YouTube member. You could also like and share our podcast, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic, logical analysis, co-podcast requests. You could also be a guest on the podcast depending on your tier. And make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications for the latest updates when new episodes are dropped. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comments section. So let's go over Brian Sargent account. If we went over him briefly before, I'm going to go through the documents. If I went through it again before, I'll just go through it again. Keep everything fresh on the mind. Document 10-883, Federal Bureau of Investigation, date of transcription April 23rd. Brian Benjamin Sargent was interviewed. After being advised of the nature of the interview and the identities of the interviewing agents, he provided the following information. Sargent was shown a photograph from the Denver Post dated April 22nd, 1999. Sargent advised that the photograph was taken in mid-June 1998 at the residence of Kirsten Thibault. Sargent identified the following individuals in the photograph, commonly known at Columbine High School as the Trenchcoat Mafia. The term Trenchcoat Mafia was given to the group as a derogatory nickname. Chris Morris purchased a black trench coat 2 years ago, and the rest of that group began wearing them in school. Sargent bought his black trench coat from Morris, but hasn't worn it recently. Curious. When did he buy it from Morris? Did Morris want to get rid of it? Did he want to give it to a guy who he thought might be fingered for the crime as well? 1. Josh Barnes. Sargent has known Barnes for approximately 8 to 9 years and contacted Barnes 6 months ago. Barnes graduated from Heritage High School in 1998. 2. Joe Stair. Sargent has known Stair for approximately 3 years. Having contacted Stair approximately 2 months ago, Stair graduated from Columbine High School in 1998 and is working at the Arby's in Southwest Plaza Mall. Amanda Stair, sister of Joe Stair, attends Columbine High School. 3. Chris Morris. Sargent has known Morris for approximately 4 years. Morris contacted Sargent on April 23rd regarding the shooting. Morris is a senior and likes Doorcraft, which is a role-playing game like Dungeons and Dragons. Pauline Colby. Sargent has known Colby for approximately 1 year, but hasn't been in contact with Sargent since July 98. Colby is a junior at Columbine, hasn't spent much time with the group photographed in the picture during the 98-99 school year. 5. Nicole Markham. Sargent has known Markham for approximately 3 years. Markham is a junior and is dating Morris. 6. Horst, last name unknown. Sargent met Horst 8 or 9 months ago, was in contact with Horst 4 or 5 months ago. Horst is a friend of Barnes. Horst is a senior or has graduated from Heritage High School. Chuck, last name unknown. Sargent has known Chuck for 1.5 years and contacted Chuck on April 22nd, 1999 at the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office while giving statements. Chuck graduated from Columbine in 96 and is a friend of Morris. 8. Kristen Thibault. Sargent has known Thibault for 2 years. Thibault is a junior. 9. Aaron Adams. Sargent has known Adams for approximately 2 years. Adam is a junior. 10. Kirsta Hanley. Sargent has known Hanley for approximately 1.5 years. Hanley is a junior. Hanley is a friend of Markham and is dating Eric Jackson, a senior at Columbine High School. I don't think we haven't talked about Eric Jackson, just another one of these Erics. Sargent advised that the following individuals associate with the Trenchcoat Mafia. Nate Dykeman. Dykeman is a good friend of Morris and a senior at Columbine. Dykeman usually ate lunch with Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. Dykeman, Harris, and Klebold all wore black trench coats in September 1998. Dykeman drives a white Ford truck with a 4-inch lift kit. I wonder if this was the beat up truck. I mean, it doesn't sound like it because there was a tan 80s style beat up truck. Eric Jackson. Jackson is good friends of Morris and drives a white Chevrolet Blazer with a blue trim. Nicole Dickey. Dickey is a freshman at Columbine, transferring from Colorado Finest, an alternative high school. Thaddeus Bowles. Bowles is a good friend of Morris and works at Echo Star Communications. Bowles dropped out of Columbine High School in the fall '98 and is working on his graduate equivalency degree. Bowles, okay. During the 97-98 school year, Sargent did not like athletes due to the athletes making fun of him and his associates. I mean, is associates a weird word? I mean, most people would just say friends. Associates. They make it sound so professional. It's weird. During the summer '98, Sargent only saw friends that were in the photograph on a limited basis due to scheduling conflicts. In the fall '98, Sargent did not talk to Eric Harris or Dylan Klebold, only to greet each other while passing in the hall. Sargent made friends with some athletes at Columbine High School and did not have the animosity against the athletes like Harris and Klebold. Dykeman was seen during the school day spending a lot of time with Harris and Klebold wearing a black trench coat. You know what else is kind of weird, though? If there are certain Trenchcoat Mafia members that don't like other Trenchcoat Mafia members, are they going to say things like that to make it look, to try to implicate others? And then, of course, they're going to lie about themselves and saying, oh, they didn't have a problem with such and such. Oh, they didn't know anything about the guns or the bombs or whatever. It's just curious how these Trenchcoat Mafia members, these associates, describe themselves and each other. I mean, anybody who takes it all at face value, I mean, it's weird. It's weird. Dykeman was seen during the school day spending lots of time with Harrison Klebold wearing a black trench coat. Sargent had a video production class with Dykeman in the fall '98 and a bowling class with Dykeman in the spring '98. On Monday, April 19th, 1999, Sargent observes Dykeman, Harris, and Klebold leave the Commons area of Columbine High School at approximately 11:10 a.m. Columbine has an open campus so students can leave campus and have lunch. Sargent left campus and had lunch with Dickey, Krista Weiner, John Zerger, and Frank Zerger. Sargent returned to campus at approximately 12:35 p.m. because he has no fifth-hour class. Upon returning, Sargent picked up Dickey, drove her to her residence. Sargent then drove to his residence and spent the afternoon at home due to illness. I mean, all these Trenchcoat Mafia members are either sick or sleeping or have alibis of girlfriend or mom or family member of some kind. I mean, these are not solid, airtight alibis by any stretch of the imagination. Dickey called Sargent that evening to discuss personal matters. Wow. On Tuesday, April 20th, 1999, at 6:30 a.m., Sargent picked up Dickey and drove... so everything I said before was the day before. So apparently he was sick the day before, and now April 20th, is he still sick? At 6:30 a.m., Sargent picked up Dickey, drove to John Paul Zerger and Frank Zerger's residence, arriving at approximately 7:10 a.m. Sargent, Dickey, and the Zergers drove to Columbine, arriving at approximately 7:30 a.m. Sargent did not recall seeing Harris's red Honda Civic or Klebold's black Volkswagen. This is 7:30 a.m. Sargent was in the ACE room, an alternative English class from 7:40 to 8:20, then went to a drawing class until 9:20 a.m. At approximately 9:25 a.m., Sargent walked to the math room and talked to Dickey and Zerger. I mean, this seems to be a very close-knit group here. At 9:30 a.m. to 10:15 a.m., Sargent was in relationships and family class. I don't know why I find that amusing. Perhaps that's because of the character references we have of Sargent, but let's continue here. After class, Sargent went... relationships and family? I'm trying to remember. I don't know if I recall such a class. Or perhaps, curious. After class, Sargent went near the choir room with Dickey. At 10:20 a.m., Sargent went to his government economics class to study for a test until 11:10 a.m. Sargent and Frank Zerger, left the school building and drove to the north side of the school to pick up Dickey. The group were going to Burger King for lunch. After lunch, Sargent drove to the Cooper 7 Theater across Clement Park from the school to smoke a cigarette. A short time later, Sargent heard sirens and Dickie received a numeric message on her pager. Dickie called home and was advised by her mother of a shooting at Columbine High School. Sargent, Dickie, and Zerger drove in the direction of the school. 3 friends of Dickie were walking down the sidewalk and advised Sargent of the shooting at Columbine High School. Dickie asked about Sarah, last name unknown, a friend. Sargent, Dickie, and Zerger drove to Sarah's residence, talked to Sarah's mother. Dickie then received a numeric message from her pager from Nick, last name unknown. Sargent and the group went to Frank, last name unknown's residence. Is this Zerger or different Frank? Where Sargent met Krista, last name unknown's boyfriend. While at Frank, last name unknown's residence, Dickie got into Frank, last name unknown's car, and Sargent following Frank, last name unknown, and Dickie to Bowles' workplace. Again, we see a lot of these Trenchcoat Mafia buddies. Sargent went to his home late Tuesday afternoon. At approximately 7 p.m. Tuesday evening, Sargent went to the Arapahoe County Police substation to give a statement. While at the substation, Sargent recognized Chuck, last name unknown, Corey Friesen, Markham, Morris, and Sherry Markham. Sargent does not recall Harris or Klebold speaking German except for German lyrics from the music group Rammstein. Sargent does not recall Harris or Klebold having knowledge of explosives or bombs. Sargent is familiar with the Anarchist Cookbook, a book containing recipes for explosives and scams. Sargent did not communicate with Harris or Klebold through the internet. He did receive an occasional message from Morris and knew Morris had a webpage. Sargent advised that Robin, last name unknown, a close friend of Harris and Klebold, may have additional knowledge. Robin is a senior at Columbine High School. So if all of these individuals can corroborate being with Sargent this entire time, it would make it seem unlikely that Sargent participated in this unless there was some kind of time discrepancy and he possibly ran through, maybe talked to some of the other members who were possibly participating in the shooting, possibly not, and then ran away. Or did he plan to be part of this and then was not and left and just got out of there as quickly as possible? So in that case, he would have some information, but he wouldn't have been directly involved in a shooter. Now, the problem is his alibis are his best buddies, so that's a bit of an issue. Now, it would be curious if that Burger King had security cameras. So this is 1999, so there are security cameras in places, some gas stations, etc. So it's not that there are none, but it's not like post 2005-ish where there's literally security cameras everywhere and we would know for sure there would be some. So I'm assuming, see, a lot of this I think could be verified. There are businesses, gas stations that could possibly see the vehicle that they were in on certain streets. So I suppose, I don't know if this was done. Did the police were they satisfied? They seem to be, if we're taking all of this at face value, it seems like the police bought the alibis of all of these Trenchcoat Mafia members that they were sleeping at home or with their mom or girlfriend. But the ones that were driving around out at lunch, did they try to pull security footage or interview other individuals at these businesses to corroborate the exact time and movements of Brian Sargent and his buddies? And I haven't really talked about brain fingerprint scanning yet, so some of these people took lie detector tests. Again, if they're complete sociopaths, perhaps they can pass the lie detector test. Or if they did get immunity, then perhaps the lie detector test was fixed. So they said they reported it was passed, even if it wasn't. Again, if we're dealing with a conspiracy, I'm not saying we are, but if we are, that's how these things could play out. So brain fingerprint scan, public brain fingerprint scans of all these individuals would reveal a lot of information. I mean, this case could be completely satisfied across the board if all the documents would be released, because there are hundreds, if not thousands, of documents as of yet not released. I believe some of them might be due to be unsealed in the next 10 years or so, but I'm not sure about that because they can continually delay that. So who knows? But between all the documents and brain fingerprint scans for all involved, I think it can be known. It could be known whether there were additional shooters, additional people with knowledge, or whatever the case may be. So that is Sargent's account from his own mouth. Now, again, keep in mind visual statistics. Sargent is the shorter one. Bit stockier, pudgy, round face, bowl cut, bushy type eyebrows. He does not match either Klebold or Harris's description. He could not be mistaken for one of these 6'5" behemoths. And so it's curious. So let's go through the witness statements against Sargent. So some of them positively ID'd Sargent. Most of them did not give a positive ID. But let's start with John Ungerland, 1701. His account actually starts on 1696, but I might have went over this report before, but let's go over it again. So there's a typo on the date, says April 3rd, but then in the narrative says April 30th. Witness John Ungerland was interviewed at his residence. He acknowledges being at Columbine on 4/20, was present in his first hour class, video production 7:30. He describes Harris and Klebold as being in this class with him and arriving 10 minutes late and walking directly into the video editing room. You know what's weird, though? How many people actually saw Harris and Klebold? Because we do have all these sightings, so if they were just running around, possibly planting weapons, possibly not, Harris making a detour to the smoker's pit, if that's accurate, then leaving the area as other students saw him leave, then coming back. I mean, who knows what's going on here? So they were 10 minutes late, walking directly into the video editing room. He described Harris as being dressed in black military-type trousers and a white t-shirt. Klebold was wearing a black trench and a Colorado Avalanche hat with the letter B sewed into it. He was wearing the hat backwards. The teacher for this class was identified as Mr. Toloco. At the conclusion of the class, Ungerland went to the tech labs and did not see Harris or Klebold again. He notes sitting directly in front of Harris and Klebold in this class and describes them often of talking among themselves about their shared racial hatred. He first became aware of problems in the school while he was in his math class in Math Room 11 with Mr. Havens. He heard shots, heard someone yelling gunmen were in the school. He immediately ran from the area, leaving his green-black REI backpack in the bathroom. He exited the school with Jenny Matthews via the east door and ran to Leawood Park. While standing at Pierce and Fair Street, he heard shots coming from the school and observed rounds impacting a sign at that location. Following the incident, approximately 2:30, while he and Jenny Matthews were southbound on Yukon Street from the area of the school, they had occasion to pass another vehicle which was northbound on Yukon at a high rate of speed. He observed both occupants of the vehicle as being dressed in black trench coats and felt fairly certain of his identification of the driver as being redacted. He described the passenger of the vehicle as being a white male, long, dirty blonde hair, recognized him as a former student who he had been in lab tech class with him in 98. Is this Joe Stair? Long, dirty blonde hair. The passenger of the vehicle was leaning halfway out the window, holding what Ungerland described as a black pistol with a short barrel. He describes the suspect vehicle as a red Geo Metro with a very bad paint job. That's a good description. He describes the vehicle appears like the clear coat is peeling off. He has never seen the vehicle before or since. Okay, curious. Is this Joe Stair? And then there's a second individual, another guy dressed in black with a black trench coat, leaning out of the vehicle with a gun in the air. So he's going southbound from the school. But this is 2:30 p.m. This is weird. That's what it says. Following the incident, approximately 14:30. I don't know. He identified Trenchcoat Mafia members known to him as Robert Perry, Brian Sargent, Tad Bowles, Chris Moore, Zach Heckler, Eric Dutro, Bobby, last name unknown, a sophomore who lives near him on Kendall Road, and Harrison Klebold. So he knows the Trenchcoat Mafia members. He's familiar with who they are, and he named all of these. He did not name the passenger. White male, long, dirty blonde hair. Former student, that'd be Joe Stair. Now, he did ID the driver, so is this Robert Perry or Brian Sargent he's IDing here? So another curious point here. Some people really believe Eric Veek was involved. So here in this incident report, April 24th, regarding a 21st interview, day after. Investigator Brooks, I'm assuming no relation to Brooks Brown, and I interviewed Brian Anderson at the park from Columbine High. In the interview, Anderson mentioned that a friend of his, John Ungerland, had witnessed something after the shooting had occurred. Investigator Brooks and I completed our interview with Anderson. Okay. On the 22nd, I interviewed John Ungerland over the phone. Ungerland stated he was a friend of Mark Thierry and sat next to Eric Vike in math class when the shooting began. So if Vike was involved, he was not involved at the beginning, according to this testimony. And again, I am not, from everything we've seen so far, it seems Eric Vike would be the least likely to be involved in this, possibly alongside Brooks Brown. Everyone else, who knows? Ungerland stated he noticed there was smoke in the main hallway of the school at the end of the math hall. He ran out of the classroom, went out the west end of the math hall. He then ran towards the east exit of the math hall, which led outside the building. Once outside, he ran to the small park to the east of Columbine High. Within 10 minutes, he heard 4 or 5 shots ricocheting, but did not hear a gun firing. He stated 4 or 5 shots were very quick, and he believed it was from an automatic weapon. Now, again, some people say, okay, well, these kids don't know what an full auto sounds next to semi-auto. And, I mean, okay, obviously these kids watch movies, but that's not the same thing. So why not do an audio demo for those that aren't I mean, obviously everybody's traumatized, but there's definitely a scale here. Some students were severely traumatized. Others were not as traumatized. So the ones that could handle it, perhaps giving them an audio test so they could hear the differences, it would be helpful. So that way they could ID certain guns and possibly other guns that were used. Or if there were 3, 4, 5 shooters firing semi-auto simultaneously, that could sound like full auto as well. So Ungerland stated that his friend, Ben Beal, jumped from a small shelter that was at the park. A faculty member, Miss Green, told them to go to the neighborhood to the east. They went to Leawood Elementary to look for Ungerland's sister and girlfriend. I'm assuming not both. 2 different individuals. His sister and his girlfriend also. Ungerland stated that he saw Trenchcoat Mafia member Zach Heckler at Leawood Elementary. He later saw another Trenchcoat Mafia member who he could not remember by name at Clement Park. He stated that both Heckler and the unidentified male were not wearing trench coats at the time. Ungerland stated he walked over to his mother's work at Mervyn's to get her car. He then drove to the subdivision, which is south of Columbine High. He had been traveling south on Wadsworth, turned east on Peakview. He was trying to make his way back to Pierce Street. When he began to drive on West Polk Ave, he saw there was a triage set up at the park along West Polk Ave. He was instructed he could not drive that way and was told to turn around. He stated it was about 2:30 p.m. Ungerland turned south on South Yukon. As he was heading south and just prior to turning east on West Peakview Ave, he observed a small red Geo Metro driving north on South Yukon Street. Ungerland stated at the bottom of the vehicle's door where the black accents were, he could see that the paint was oxidizing. Ungerland stated he recognized the driver of the Geo Metro as redacted, a Trenchcoat Mafia member. He described the driver as being real tall. Okay, so this is either Robert Perry or Chris Morris. Definitely not Brian Sargent. He stated the driver's head almost hitting the ceiling of the vehicle. Wow. So this would most likely be the only people tall enough to do that. That's probably Robert Perry or Chris Morris. He stated or possibly other Trenchcoat Mafia members from other schools. Like, we've gone through the testimony. Apparently there were numerous students at Chatfield and other high schools that were members of the Trenchcoat Mafia, and their MO is that all these guys seem to be really tall. He stated the driver was thin, with short dark brown hair, no mustache, wearing a black shirt. Okay, so that's not Robert Perry. Robert Perry's got long hair, so this is either Chris Morris or another student from elsewhere. He was, wearing black shirt, white male, 18 to 20 years old. Redacted, had been a student at Columbine High. I asked Ungerland on a scale of from 1 to 10, with 10 being positive, how sure he was that Redacted was the driver of the vehicle. He stated number 3, so he's not sure at all. Curious. Or he's just hedging, because he doesn't want to get in trouble if it's not him. Ungerland has girlfriend Jennifer Matthews with him in the car. She made a remark regarding the passenger in the Geo Metro. She asked, was that guy holding a camera? Ungerland stated there was a white male passenger in the red Geo Metro who was hanging out the passenger window. He stated the passenger had his entire right arm, shoulder, and upper right side of his body outside of the window. Ungerland stated he slowed down his car and looked behind him to watch the Geo Metro. He stated he saw a gun in the hands of the passenger who was hanging out the passenger window. He described the gun as being small. Like in the movies, black in color, small hollow circle on the tip of the gun. He stated the Geo Metro was speeding northbound. When Ungerland looked at the passenger, he recognized him as a person who used to hang around Brian Sargent, Dylan Klebold, Eric Harris, and Tad Bowles, who are all members of the Trenchcoat Mafia. He described the passenger as being a white male, short, perhaps 5'9", with long, dirty blonde hair that was not pulled back. The passenger was wearing a black duster. Ungerland stated he recognized the passenger as being one of the more interesting members of the Trenchcoat Mafia. Interesting. He described him as being a fanatic in the group. He stated he had been a classmate of his last year and he would always come to school wearing a black duster that appeared to be Australian style. Ungerland looked for this individual's picture in Columbine's 96, 97, and 98 yearbooks, but he could not find the passenger's picture. So is this Joe Stair, long, dirty blonde hair, not pulled back? He said he was short, perhaps 5'9". That's not that short. Stair is around 6 feet tall. Some people say he's a little shorter. Other people said he looked a little taller. But Ungerland stated the passenger was a classmate of his during 97, 98. They took the 7th hour tech lab class together in the second semester. He remembers him wearing a black duster on a daily basis. The teacher of that class was either Mr. Talokos or Peggy Dodd. I asked Ungerland on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being positive, how sure he was that the individual in his 7th hour tech lab class was the same person he saw holding the gun outside the passenger window in the red Geo Metro. Ungerland stated his confidence was an 8 or 9 that he was the same individual. I'm assuming he's talking about Joe Stair here, and he's relatively positive it's Joe Stair with the gun hanging out the passenger window, and he's not sure who the driver was. Also, if that's a really tiny car, is it possible someone a lot shorter would still have their head close to the ceiling? Ungerland described the passenger holding the gun in a ready position. He stated the individual had the gun in his hand next to his face and shoulder with the barrel of the gun pointing upward. This person held the gun in his right hand. Ungerland said he was concerned that the two in the Geo Metro were heading back to the triage area in order to start shooting people there. Ungerland quickly found a state patrol office at St. Pierce Street and West Weaver and informed him of what he had seen. It is unknown who that trooper was. Ungerland then picked up his sister, went back to Leawood Elementary, and then went home and watched TV. On TV, he saw that the two suspects who had killed themselves were identified as Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. He told me that he saw both Eric and Dylan in his first period video class that morning. He stated that both boys appeared normal. They were sitting by themselves. They were discussing war tactics, such as their favorite weapons and movies. This is a little strange, though. First of all, I don't know how corroborated it is by other people that they attended however many classes that day. Why would they be talking about their favorite movies if they're supposed to be executing this shooting? I don't know. Why would they be... if they had a specific plan to start shooting at a specific time, or were they waiting for others to give them instructions on that? I don't know. I don't know. Is that strange? I asked him if their conversation mentioned anyone in particular. Unger stated that no specific persons were mentioned. Ungerland said that it would be normal for the two of them to converse about being neo-Nazis and wanting to kill Jews and blacks. He stated they were always talking about weapons, bombs, and the anarchist cookbook. Ungerland stated he heard there was video footage of the two making bombs or exploding bombs. He did not know where the footage was and said that the bombs were apparently small bombs. Ungerland stated that a student named Chris Moore, unknown if this is a reference to Chris Morris, always wore a black beret and wore sunglasses, so that would be Chris Morris. Ungerland stated he hasn't seen him in a couple months, but that his friend, Ben Beal, saw Chris walking in the school the night that the locks of the school were superglued. He thought that might have been possibly around April 14th, 1999. Was that a senior prank? This is the first I've seen mention of that in all of these documents. I asked Ungerland to describe Brian Sargent to me. He described him as having a round, chubby face, big guy, bushy eyebrows. He stated he had seen Sargent at about 7:20 on the morning of the shooting by the school's main entrance. He stated Sargent did not have a duster on at that time. He was wearing a short-sleeved, dingy, white button-up shirt, a polo type. He said Sargent was with a white female, short, long blonde hair, glasses, and chubby. The two of them were holding each other. She was wearing a white shirt, unknown style of pants. Now, why would he be asked to describe Brian Sargent if Brian Sargent was not the driver? So did he ID Brian Sargent as the driver and Joe Stair as the passenger? So here's the May 5th dated report and follow-up reporting Officer McFadden. On May 5th, 1999, about 10:25 a.m., interviewing John Ungerland concerning two individuals in a red Geo Metro brandishing a firearm. On April 20th, approximately 1430 hours. He was in the area of Pierce and Weaver by Columbine High, driving his vehicle north on Weaver when he observed a red and black Geo Metro traveling south on Weaver, wherein the passenger was hanging out the passenger front window brandishing a gun. Ungerland further described the Geo Metro as having oxidizing paint, which was located at the bottom of the doors. Ungerland stated that he first noticed a vehicle coming towards him. What caught his attention was the passenger hanging out a third of his body out the passenger front window. Ungerland described passenger white male, 18 to 19 years old, shoulder length, dirty blonde hair, clean shaven, and thin build. Clean shaven. So Joe Stair did have that mustache. So again, are we dealing with yet other individuals? Unless he didn't see the mustache in the movement of the vehicle. A mustache a little bit easier to miss than a full beard and a dirty blonde hair guy, maybe. All right, it looks like he did not identify. So he didn't identify Sargent as in the car. So here's what we have here. Ungerland stated the passenger was wearing a trench coat, black in color, had a gun in his one hand, describing the gun as black in color and a pistol. Ungerland described the driver as a white male, approximately 18 years of age, 6'5", black hair, regular in length, with a long face, with acne on his face, sunken cheeks, and crooked teeth, believed to be redacted. So that would be Robert Perry. For some reason, he's stating his hair was regular in length, but acne on his face, crooked teeth. That's a typical description of Robert Perry with the pronounced acne. Ungerland also stated that the driver was wearing a black trench, duster type. Vehicle in question was driving approximately 45 to 50 miles an hour when he noticed the vehicle when the vehicle passed. Ungerland said he believed that neither of these individuals were students at Columbine High School. Ungerland stated that he observed the vehicle coming toward him approximately a block or two prior to passing him, described the handgun black in color, shaped like a box with a little barrel. Ungerland stated that he has never seen the vehicle before. Ungerland stated he knows Redacted from going to Columbine High School in 1998, and he talked to him before in computer lab and knew him to be associated with the Trenchcoat Mafia, but he believed that Redacted was no longer a student at Columbine High School. Ungerland also stated that Redacted was very tall and had bad acne on his face. Ungerland stated that he was 100% sure that the passenger was holding a gun while hanging out of the vehicle. Number 1 and number 2 on the back of each photo lineup advised it had no significance. Hanging out of the vehicle. Prior to concluding the interview, I advised Ungerland that I would be showing him 2 photo arrays to which I would mark number 1, number 2 on the back of each photo lineup, advised it had no significance. I first showed Ungerland photo lineup number 1, which he stated that number 5 looks like the passenger, stating he was 75% sure of that. I then showed Ungerland photo lineup number 2, to which advised number 6 was redacted, but he was not positive, only 85% sure. Okay. Ungerland stated at the time of the incident his girlfriend Jenny Matthews was a passenger in the vehicle and observed the same incident that he did. When asked, Ungerland stated that he had been on TV 3 times, once on Channel 9, once on CNN, once on the Sally Raphael show. Ungerland stated that Sarah Raphael paid for his flight and room, but that he was not paid for his story. Would be curious if anybody has videos of these interviews. Another follow-up report here, May 18th, 1999, regarding May 14th. Investigator contacted John and his mother at their home. Investigator G.B. Muma. I don't know if I've seen that name before. At that time, I told John I was conducting follow-up on his reported conversation with Eric Vike and that I needed him to tell me the story again. John stated that Eric was talking to him in the hallway and they were talking about school security and that Eric was talking about going on a rampage using road flares and gas that he had in his car, and he would load it all up and bring it into school in his backpack. I asked John when he had heard this conversation. He stated that it was at the beginning of 5th hour on Monday the 10th of May. Okay, so this is actually regarding Eric Vike, and we'll get into that later. But, okay, the follow-up October 22nd regarding an October 21st interview. Again, McFadden. Approximately 4:15, Ungerland responded to Jeffco Sheriff's Office to be re-interviewed. He had given about a Geo Metro. Wow, I first asked Ungerland if he was sure that Harris and Klebold were in his first period class on April 20th. Ungerland stated he had changed his mind and was possibly mistaken that Harris and Klebold were in that class on April 20th. Huh. That's curious. I don't know what to make of that. Ungerland stated he was sure he was a Geo Metro with two individuals in it approximately 2:30 on April 20th. Ungerland stated the driver of the vehicle was an individual that looked like redacted, but he was not sure if it was. I explained to Ungerland that redacted was with family members at the time, and Ungerland reiterated he was not sure, but thought the person looked like redacted. Ungerland stated he was 100% sure that the passenger of the vehicle was hanging out the window with a weapon/firearm. It's funny, like they were trying to get him to say it couldn't have been those individuals, but they can't say anything about the gun that he saw. I don't know, weird. I also can't help but wonder, I don't know if anybody tracked this down, were the absences on the 20th or even the 19th and 20th, there were certain students that were sick both days. Again, students that supposedly have no connection to any of these individuals. I can't help but wonder, is it possible that certain Trenchcoat Mafia members who were aware something was going to happen, or even just the chance of something might happen, they told certain individuals that, so certain individuals stayed home that day. I don't know if there's a breakdown comparing if the number of absences on April 20th were average for, let's say, the April 20th the previous year, the year before that, or just any random Tuesday, or any other random day throughout the course of the school year in April, a random April day. What were the averages from the 1st to the 20th? What were the averages the previous year? What were the averages on any given month? And just to compare those, because if there was an unusual amount of absences, that would be curious, wouldn't it? Again, I don't know. I haven't seen anybody do that comparison. I guess someone would have to have access to all the attendance records to do that. I'm assuming investigators would have done that, but who knows? And maybe they did, and if they did, maybe they didn't reveal it if it was unusual. Because we're talking about, around 2,000 students here. So let's say 10 to 30 student absences per day. What's an average day absence rate at a high school? I mean, I don't know. I mean, perhaps in the colder months it'd be higher. But towards the end of April now, would it not be as high as in the middle of winter? And that day, was there an unusual amount? Again, I don't know. I really don't know. It would be curious to know that information. So we just went over Ungerland, and it's curious. And Brian Sargent had a little bit of a mustache as well. Jennifer Harmon made that statement, 65-68. Wow, we have a lot of documentation from Jennifer Harmon starting on 64-82. Were they really interested in what Harmon had to say? Wow, okay, so let's, regarding the absences, we do have some interesting information here. Obviously, it could be coincidental, but again, so Jennifer Harmon has some of the most documents I've seen here. I mean, there's dozens of document pages here regarding Jennifer Harmon. They were really interested in what she had to say, so let's go through her account. So this is actually going to address what I just said, starting document 6482. April 27th, 1999, following his transcription of an audio taped statement of Jennifer Harmon. Individuals conducting interview are Detective David Schultz of the Denver Police Department and Detective Wayne Bryant of the Arvada Police Department. This interview pertains to a shooting at Columbine High School in unincorporated Jefferson County. All right, so they asked her birthday, a bunch of stuff. Okay. Today is Friday, April 23rd, 99. It's now approximately 3:27 p.m. We're at University Conference in a conference room on the 3rd floor interviewing Jennifer Harmon follow-up interview. Jennifer was interviewed on the 20th in the afternoon following the admission of Michael Taylor at University Hospital. Jennifer, when I ran into you in the hall back over there a few minutes ago, you said you had some additional information to share with us. What can you tell us? I was telling you guys about that Pauline Colby girl. When we were at church yesterday, I was talking to Miss Frommer, and that's where my last class is supposed to be before I come up to take Marky home. And we had a banquet that day, a DEECA banquet, and I told Pauline that I would take her. Then I told her that I wasn't going to be able to take her because I was going to go to class that day. She said, okay. I asked Miss Frommer if she would take her. She said she would. And so I guess they got back, and when Pauline is in there, in that class from 11 till 11:10 till about between 11:50 and 12:05, because she has both lunches off. And so I was at lunch. They were there getting back at 4th hour. Miss Frommer asked her if she was going to go change, and she said she was going to go change. She never came back. She just barely left, and when I was listening to her on this on the news, she said she didn't, that she had just went home sick, and she told Miss Frommer she was going to go change and come back. She never came back. Schultz says, let me understand that. What time did she start her class? She's supposed to be there between 11:10 and 12:50. Or not 12:50, 11:50 to 12:05. Somewhere between there, and she'd leave because she has both lunches off. Okay. Now, this information you got from Miss Schommer. Okay. Unintelligible Frommer from Frommer. Yes, FR. She normally attends the DEECA meetings. She never misses. Okay. School store, never, not once. She never misses what? The school store, nothing. What do you mean she's never missed the school store? School store, that's where she's supposed to be. That's where we do our sales for lunches. So she's been in DEECA for a while. Yes. It's her junior year. She's been there all year long. Okay. And she's never missed school store once except for Tuesday. Okay. So since junior year, she's never missed DECA. How long have you been in DECA? I've been in 2 years. 2 years since junior. Yeah. The reason I'm asking, this all came up after you left today, what you're talking about. Okay. Let me ask you this. Did you see her at the Wellshire? Is that where you were earlier? No, I didn't. That's where the DECA meeting was, and I didn't go. I missed it because I was going to finishing my classes that day. I asked Miss Frommer the day before if she could take her. She said yes. So you had 4 classes in the morning on Tuesday. Yep, and you went to all those classes. What time was the DECA meeting? Everyone's supposed to meet after first hour. Pauline was supposed to meet Miss Frommer at 8:20 in her room right after first hour and go to the luncheon. Yeah, and I didn't go to second hour because we were just going to have a sub, and so I was just going to miss it that day because I was caught up on everything. So you went to your classes instead of going to DECA? Yeah, I went. Now, to my classes except for Miss Frommer's class because we had a sub that day. Well, what time? My understanding was DECA was to start earlier. What time was it to start? Harmon says, well, the Wellshire, everyone was supposed to meet up at the school right after first hour. Everyone is supposed to leave then. First hour gets out at 8:20. Okay, how do you spell last name on Pauline? Pauline Colby, Colby. How old is she? She's 16, I think 16 or 17. What does she look like? Kind of chubby face, long black hair, thin eyebrows. She was on the news with her older sister. Her older sister's a senior. Pauline's a junior. She's kind of chubby. Okay, now do you know when she left school? I didn't. She doesn't drive. Does she have a cell phone? No, I don't think so. She said she checked out at the clinic because that's the only way you can check out, because you have to have your parents sign you out or you can forge it yourself. Wow. So she's telling that to police. Not sign it yourself. You can forge it. What time did you see her that day? I didn't see her. I was at school, but I was watching the news when she said that she called her dad to come get her. She went home sick because she was lucky. Brian says, so she called her dad to come get her? This is what you saw on TV. Yeah. Was sick with her sister. And that's the reason she wasn't in school that day. And is it normally that happens that way? She will. The parents got to come to the school physically and sign them out. Okay. They know if it's a forgery or not, I guess, because students can forge themselves and say they were sick or not. Let me ask, would you know her father if you saw him? Can you tell if they're related because of their whole family? Look-alike? Okay, you didn't think this stuff about... I forgot to tell you guys, the other day I was talking to Pauline in class, because I come in right after she does, and I always bring up her lunches and stuff for her, and I was looking in the yearbook all over the weekend, and I was all you were in the Trenchcoat Mafia, and she was all yeah. And I was all, oh, well, was there a specific way you had to get into it? And she said, no, it's just for people that are outcasts. And I was, oh. I was like, so did you have to get out anyway? She's all, no, they just started saying really weird things to me and started scaring me. And I was like, oh, well, that kind of stuff. And she's all, I don't really want to talk about it. And I was all, oh, she's all, but someday they're gonna try to get back at somebody. Then there's this other kid, Nate, that I know he was in my class with Dylan and Eric. And when John and I were pulling up to the detour, Nate was behind me in his white truck that says NIN on his window. And he listens to the same stuff as Eric and them, and he talks to Dylan and Eric all the time in class. They're like really good friends. Then when Mr. Camper, Marky's teacher, ran up to mine, and Mr. Ortiz's ran up, they told us to get as many people in our cars as we could. We got them in and we're leaving, and Nate turns around. He goes, I can't believe they actually did this. Like he knew. Like he couldn't believe that they did it that day. Like if he knew something, he had known something. Okay, so now Schultz is asking her back about Pauline. She met Pauline 8:20, took her to the Welshire, brought her back. And what did Miss Frommer tell you happened when she came back from Welshire? When they came back, she said she asked Pauline what she was doing, and she answered she was going to go change. She said yes, and they were in the school store. And who was in the school store? Miss Frommer and what's his name? What's the other kid's name? I can't think of the name right now. Louis Gillespie. Louis Gillespie Lindsay something. Okay, and Louis, he was hiding in the marketing room, business section, office or something. Miss Frommer was hiding. They heard gunshots. They thought it was just something popping. They didn't know what it was, like fireworks or something. Do you know where she was hiding? She was hiding in her office. That was Frommer. Okay, let me take you back through it. From what you understand, Pauline was with Frommer and Louis Gillespie in the store. What do you understand happened before the shots ran out? Pauline told her that she was going to go and get changed, and she just left. She never came back, and it's obviously she would know something if she didn't come back. So I'm guessing here Harmon is accusing Pauline Colby of knowing that something was going to go down, which is why she's saying she's going to go change, and then she just disappears. Or she doesn't know what's going to go down, and she just wanted to change for whatever reason, and it happened to go down at the time she was going to go change. What class does this Miss Frommer teach? She's our business marketing. Okay, do you know her first name? Kathy, and I know her work number. It's at the school. Okay, what's her voicemail number? So then, okay, Pauline said she was going to go change, but Miss Frommer said she just never came back. It connected with me when I saw on the news that morning when she was sitting on a truck bed with her sister and some other girl. When do you understand that she came back with Miss Frommer at what time approximately? Well, it's fourth hour sometime, so it had to be in between, anywhere between 10:20 and fourth hour starts at 11:20, ends at 11:10. So anywhere between there, they could have came. 10:20 and 11:10. So we open the gates and start selling at 12:05. Okay. We discussed Pauline. Let me ask you this. In your conversations with Pauline before this happened, I know you didn't see her that day. But before this happened, she did give you information. She just said that she knew that someday they're gonna get back at her. I knew she was scared that they were gonna come after her because she'd got out. And since she doesn't talk to them anymore. Let me just go over Pauline Colby's account before we continue here. This is 6259 and onward in the documents. May 4th, 10:45 a.m. interview. Colby stated April 20th she was sick but went to school in the morning anyway, as there was a DECA banquet that morning which she had already paid for. She returned to Columbine High from the banquet at approximately 11 a.m. Colby called her father to come pick her up. Colby's father arrived, signed her out at approximately 11 a.m. Colby stated she had her father call the doctor for an appointment while she was at the DECA banquet on the morning of April 20th. Colby stated that, he called the doctor, set an appointment time for 3 p.m., as he felt Pauline would be home from school by then. Colby advised she did not go back to school or anywhere except the doctor's office that day. Colby advised her father took her to the doctor's office for the appointment. Approximately 11:45 a.m. on May 4th, we contacted front desk Dr. Scott Green's office. We were advised that Mr. Colby had called the morning of April 20th, set up an appointment for 3 p.m. He brought her into the office for the appointment. They were not allowed to divulge any information about the visit. We have another document here. Interview April 21st, 1999, 1:30 p.m. With the permission of Colby's father, witness was conducted concerning Colby's knowledge of the shooting and bombing incident at Columbine High. Colby advised April 20th she was not feeling well and had a bad earache. She telephoned her father to come to the school, drove her to the residence. According to Colby, her father signed her out at 11:11 a.m. She did not hear of the incident until later in the day. So he signed her out at 11:11 a.m. How many minutes does it take for them to walk back to the parking lot and drive away? Colby's association with the Trenchcoat Mafia was only as an associate in that she knew most of the females that associated with the group. She first met Nicole Markham in junior high while they were attending Ken Carroll Middle School. She advised Markham was Chris Morris's girlfriend. Colby advised she first met Kristen Thibault approximately 2 years ago when they were freshmen at Columbine High. She advised she met other members of the Trenchcoat Mafia through Markham and Thibault and stated that the group was already formed and had been for approximately 2 years before she met them. She advised Morris was the leader. She also had met Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold in the past, but rarely talked with them. She said she had not talked with either of them for the past 1.5 years. However, Colby stated that she talked with the girls who associated with the Trenchcoat Mafia every day at school and rarely talked with the males in the group. No one had ever mentioned an event like this occurring, or had Colby ever heard a member or associate of the Trenchcoat Mafia planning this type of action. Curious what she's telling the police versus what she told her friend or fellow student. In the past, Colby had seen Morris at school with a hunting knife in his possession. She had never seen firearms in the possession of any Trenchcoat Mafia member, to include Harris or Klebold. However, she stated the male members of the group would spar with each other using bamboo martial arts sticks. Colby never heard Harris, Klebold, or any other members of the Trenchcoat Mafia discussing manufacturing of pipe bombs. Colby advised the group was allegedly formed by a group of friends because the athletes in the school and others would harass members of the group, and this way they could stick together. The group did not like the athletes because, in their opinion, the jocks ruled the school. The athletes and others would tease the group because of their hair and dress customs. Colby never heard Harris or Klebold using racial slurs, nor were they into the neo-Nazi movement to the best of her knowledge. She did state that sometimes Harris and Klebold would speak German to each other, which was their way of making the other students pay attention to them. Colby advised she does have access to a computer at her residence, but never communicated with the group over the computer. She only used the computer for schoolwork or to play games. Earlier today, Colby had spoken with Markham, and she advised that Morris was in hiding from the police and media. Markham stated he was in hiding due to the harassment from the police and media. Colby stated she never imagined anything like this happening and did not think any student was capable of doing this. She believes that occurred due to the constant harassment and teasing the group was receiving from other students in the school. Colby could provide no further information relevant to this investigation. So that's it. That's all we have from Colby, unless there's many other documents that have been sealed. So continuing on here with Harmon's account of what Colby told her, which obviously differs here. So she said, so this is Harmon speaking of Colby. She said that someday they're going to get back at her. I knew she was scared because they were going to come after her because she'd got out. And since she didn't talk to them anymore. Brian asks, I'd misunderstand maybe, are they going to come back after her or... Then Harmon says, well, after they knew that they were going to come, like they're going to, like, what's the word? They're going to come on, like get back at people, and she was afraid she was going to be one of the people that, because she got out. Brian asks, Harmon responds, yeah, because she knew all about this information. And I think I heard her say that she knew about how she knew that they had this like kind of power, that they were available, unintelligible, but she never thought they would do it. Something like that. Schultz asked, did she ever talk about what these guys told her? Harmon says, I think she pretty much, she wouldn't go into detail about nothing. What did she tell you? Harmon says, she just said that someday they were going to get back at somebody or like people, and that she was afraid she was going to be one of the people. Do you know the names of the people she was talking about? Harmon says, I would think Pat McDuffie, but I don't know. Pat McDuffie, that's his name, yeah. And Brian asked, now, is he going to be the one that's hurt, or is he going to be hurting people, Pat McDuffie? Harmon says he used to be friends with them, so I don't think that he would do that, because no one really knew that. Are you saying that Pat McDuffie would be one of the people coming back to get people? Harmon says no. And Brian asked, or would he be the victim? Harmon says everyone who got out of it would be a victim. Huh. And Brian asks, okay, he got out of it then. Harmon says, yeah. So is that why McDuffie named all these people? We went over McDuffie's report. He's the one who named more names than anybody else. I mean, he had the most damning account. I mean, it's crazy. And then all of a sudden, later on, he's saying he was hypothesizing. To cover that up, weird. So Schultz asked, I gotta ask you this, are you frightened of these guys? I need you to be honest. Harmon says, I wasn't really before, you know. I never ever had a problem with these kids, never did, because I always talked to them. They were really nice to me, but I think that now, definitely, yeah, just because they're so quiet and they keep their lives all separate. I need to ask you, Schultz says, I need to ask you this question. Would you withhold any information from us at all? Harmon says, because you were afraid of these guys. No, I wouldn't. I would rather see them go away and pay for what they've done. I would. Do anything. And Brian asked, anything you knew you would tell us? Harmon says, yeah, I would. Schultz says, okay. Harmon says, definitely. Schultz says, that's really important that if there's anything, I know we went over this the other day and you've got some new information, but again, I'd mention it to the other day. Any information that you have, and we'll go through some of the other stuff you told today, but it's so important that even if it seemed trivial or, you know, third or fourth hand, we'll try to track it back. Or if you're frightened, if there's, you know, if there's any concern on your part where you think they might try to come after you, we'll do what we can to protect you. If that's a concern, tell us, okay? He's actually being honest here. He's not promising any kind of protection. He's just saying, we'll do what we can, whatever that is. Wow, that's messed up. Harmon says, yeah. Schultz says, because we're here to get information, but we'll try to help you if we can. Harmon says, all right. Going back, he said a lot of stuff. The one that sticks out in my mind is you and John are coming back. You saw somebody behind you in a truck. Go ahead. Tell me more about that. Brian asks, did you say he was in front of you or behind you? Harmon responds, he was in his truck behind me. And I had to flip a U-ey to come around, and I had to come in front of his truck. When we were coming, he was facing this way I was facing towards Pierce. I was right by the police officers. Nate was driving his truck, and he was in line behind me. And in order for all the kids, the cars to get around you had to go in the driveway and flip a U-ey without hitting anybody. When I was flipping a U-ey, my window was facing his. He was saying, I can't believe they actually did this today. Brian says, okay, and then you were actually exiting. Was your vehicle in front of his vehicle or behind it? He was behind me until I flipped around, and then you were in front of him. Then I was on the side of him. I think he was wearing a black shirt. He works at 5 Star right by my house. Harmon says, and they had pretty gory stories. They would also talk during class. Nate pretty much wore black. They all pretty much wore black. Nate wrote this poem about a haunted house, and Miss Kelly had the final copy of it. I think she may have handed it back, but it was talking about this gory death, and then it was unintelligible, haunted house, and it was just a big joke. Brian asks, okay, but you definitely remember him saying something to the effect of that he didn't believe they actually did this. Yeah. Can you remember the exact words he said? Harmon says, I can't remember exactly, but I think that was it. I think John heard it too. I'm pretty sure John heard it. He was in the front seat. What was Nate driving? A white Ford, like an F-250. It's like a piece of junk. He just bought it not too long ago. It's got a big white NIN for 9-inch nails in the back. Harmon says he lives by down the street from her. She lives next to all these kids. What is Nate's association with the... I guess they're asking about the Trenchcoat Mafia here. This is a transcript of a phone conversation, so not all of it. Some of it's muffled. I don't know what it is. I haven't even seen him on the news. I haven't heard from him, and I usually always see him, I haven't seen him at any of the church things, none of them. I didn't see him at Clement. Okay. I haven't seen him at all, and Nate and I talk a lot. And you know him because he is in. Well, I mean, I've known him since we've gone to school, but he's in my video classes. He's in all my classes with Dylan. He lives down the street. She also talks about Eric Andriano, another Eric I don't believe we talked about. In her video class, there were other kids doing videos on assassinations. She talks about their groups in class, bunch of stuff. Okay, so now back to Pauline. He asked if Pauline was in either of those classes, creative writing video classes. She says, Okay. The other day when you were talking to Pauline, you also were making statements that she was talking about. Harmon says, Brian asks, things gonna happen. When was the last time prior to Tuesday that she had made statements to you like that? Was it the day before, that day, or when, I think I talked to her on Monday. Monday, the day before, I think I talked to her on Monday or Friday. It was either Monday or Friday. Can you remember where you were that conversation? We were in the middle of the school store, and I was just asking her about it. So she also said Pauline Colby never misses the school store except that day. Okay, so that's what I was talking before with the attendance records. And when she said she was being sick, was she sick because she knew something and she was super nervous? Was that also manifesting physically? Who knows? And so they were in the middle of the school store, Monday or Friday. I was just asking her about if there's a certain thing you have to do to get in for the group or something like that. She said no, she wouldn't really go into details about anything with me, though. And then Schultz asked what started it. Harmon saying because they were going through the yearbook this year, and she said, I didn't know you were in the Trenchcoat Mafia. She said, yeah, I was in last year. And there's a certain way to get in or out. She's all not really, and all you had to do was be banned or something. You'd have to be ruled as an outcast or something. And I was like, oh, and then I asked her how she got out, and she didn't really say anything. She just said that she got out because they were telling her weird stuff, and they were just scaring her. And stuff, and that's how we started on that. She asked me, of all people, if I could take her to the banquet. Like, if there's something directed to me, kinda. And I'm looking at this from knowing she had to know something. Because she asked me, Pauline got asthma and she can't be around people who smoke, and I smoke. Huh! That's curious. So Harmon says she's a smoker. Pauline has asthma. So this is the first time she ever asked her for a ride. That's weird also. She asked if she could ride with me in my car, and it was just going to be me and her. Just me and her, and that's it. And you didn't think about that until after. Nuh-uh, this happened. Yeah, I talked to Miss Frommer yesterday at church, and Miss Frommer didn't even know what happened to Pauline after that. She didn't know she went home or nothing, and I think that's just weird. Schultz says okay. Harmon says that even no one knew where she turned up. And they got to have, you sign in, there's a sign-in sheet the attendance ladies keep, so it shows who forged. You can tell if they forged it or not. So Brian asks, you left a message on my phone that you had more information. Was there anything else besides Pauline? Because you mentioned Pauline's name when you, on the message. Anything else you wanted to talk to us about? Did you know about, or have you heard other people saying things going to happen? Anything? Harmon says, when I went to Clement Park, some of Dylan and Eric's friends showed up, and they were just standing there smiling while everyone was grieving. Wow, that is a damning account of these so-called Trenchcoat Mafia or Trenchcoat Mafia-like associates. So even if they weren't involved, they seem to be very happy about everything that happened. I mean, even Joe Stair on his interview on the news couldn't help but smiling. Now, was that Duper's delight? Were they directly involved and they're smiling because they got away with it? Or are they just smiling because they're sociopaths and they're happy that people got killed and this tragic situation occurred that they always wanted to occur? They were always joking about it. Maybe they never even believed it would happen, but now that it has, they're complete sociopaths and they wanted to just go there and smile at people. I mean, who knows? But this is Harmon's account. Do you know who that was? They don't even look familiar to me. Do you know what kind of car they're driving? They were waiting. From what I saw, because I had to drop one of my friends off, they were walking. They walked past us when they were at Clement. They were just in a big group, and they were just smiling like they were gloating. Do you know anybody in the group that has a red car, maybe a convertible or maybe a red Pontiac? Can't think of a red Pontiac. You know who might know stuff? It wasn't last year. He was friends with the guy I told you about, Robert Craig. They're kind of trying to recreate what Robert did. Michael Kirby. Okay, so Schultz asked about the parking situation. Trenchcoat Mafia parked in the same place. Schultz says every day. Harmon asked, it was Eric when the school, the commons, stairway where my friend was... Okay, Harmon says, it was Eric when there's the school, the commons goes like this, then the stairway where my friend was killed, Rachel comes down like this. Eric is the first parking spot, then it's Dylan, and I can't remember who drives the blue car. There's the blue car, it's a 4-door. Okay, let me go back. Eric usually parks the first car. What kind of car did he have? He has a 2-door gray Honda Prelude with bumper stickers on the back. Can't remember what kind. Harmon says, I think it's got a sunroof. Anything else you can remember about the car? Bumper stickers. Really shiny, gloomy kind of car. And then Dylan, beat up BMW, black. It had a big 9-inch nails thing on the back of it. 2 big speakers in the back of the window. Who parks next to Dylan? I can't think of his name right now. It's a blue 4-door. I can't remember his name right now, but he was also part of them. I just can't remember his name. He was also a senior, and his car was also there that day. Oh, okay, wow. And who is the next car? She says Brian Sargent is the next car. The one with the 4-door Honda Accord. He's the only one out of all of them who has tinted windows. Who would park next to Brian? The soccer players, some of the soccer players. So Eric's car, Dylan's car, other blue car, then Brian Sargent's car, then a soccer player here, a soccer player here, a soccer player here, and then Nate's car right there. And then there's my friend Chad, and then there's Miss Frommer's car right there. So Nate is pretty much behind Brian Sargent's car. Yeah, pretty much. What kind of car Nate drive? Big white Ford truck. Big and rusty. Huh. So, wow. Okay, so in all the smoke could possibly... Okay, so actually, wow. Could Nate's truck have been mistaken for that other beat-up truck? Big and rusty. Schultz asked, going back to the 20th, you said that there was something really unusual that you noticed when you were in school in class. Harmon said not one of them showed up to nothing. Not one of them. You mean in the morning? None of them showed up to any of their classes. Yeah, in my 2 classes. None of them showed up in my classes. And the last class that Dylan and Eric and Nate had, it was Miss Kelly's, and right after I got out, they started shooting, I guess. Because Miss Kelly said we got to get outside the building. Some shooting started. Schultz asks, if I understand what you told us, you returned from lunch. You didn't see any of these kids. Nate, Dylan, anybody. Uh-huh. Except on the 20th. Yeah, Tuesday. Except for Nate. I think I might have saw Nate. I always seen him in video. I think he's always in there for some reason. I don't know why he's always in there. He always waits for Dylan in there. But none of the other Trenchcoat Mafia members. Maha. He always waits there for some reason. I always see him there. Okay, how positive are you? I'm almost positive because he's sitting there with Mike and everybody. He's friends with a bunch of kids. Schultz asked, okay, so what I'm hearing is all the guys that are normally in the video class and all the guys and gals, whoever, that associate with the Trenchcoat Mafia who are normally in the creative writing class were not there. But you remember seeing Nate at the beginning of video class. Harmon says yes. What happened to him? I don't know. I think he might have that hour off. I don't know. So Brian asks, he's in a different video class. Yeah, but he always waits for Dylan and talks to him. Harmon says, but I think he might have that hour off, but I just don't understand how he could be like, why he'd be coming back to school. I think he's got that hour off too or something unintelligible. I mean, they started asking her about who has which hour off. It would be curious to line them up because was the shooting planned for a particular time that had a back-to-back lunch and off hour for these students? Cross-referencing this all is very tough, but there seems to be a lot of confusion over who had which class off. Okay, Schultz asked, let's talk about Nate for a minute. How did you ever talk to him about the Trenchcoat Mafia or what his life was like or anything like that? Harmon said, Nate really didn't have a bad life. He never said he had a bad life. He never complained about nothing. He always bragged about how much money his parents had, always bragged about everything. He didn't get all that good of grades. I don't think so. He never really did school very much. Who did he hang out with? Dylan and Eric and them. Did he ever talk about why he was hanging out with those guys? No, not really. Did you have any conversations with him about any of that stuff? Harmon says, I was just unintelligible of all that. I don't understand. I always used to tell him that I didn't understand why their stories were so negative. He just kind of didn't really say nothing about that. Like he never really talked about them. Harmon, okay, so I always saw him talking to him all the time, but never said nothing about him. Schultz says, okay, and when you said that he didn't talk about what he did with them, Harmon said they would never tell. They would never tell what they did over the weekend. They would always just say, I think Dylan would always say that it's Friday night, they're all gonna go get drunk or something, I don't know. Schultz says, okay, I really need your help with this. This is really important. I'm just getting a sense that maybe you know more about what Nate said or did than you're telling me. I mean, that's kind of accusatory, Mr. Schultz. Investigator Schultz. This poor girl has just been through this traumatic event. Harmon says, no, I can't even remember. Nate really didn't even talk about what they really did much. He said they hung out. What did they do when they hung out, or did he tell you about it? Harmon says, I think they played games, I don't know what they played. He just said that. They'd go and do stuff over the weekend. I think they played video games. Schultz said, like I said, if you're scared, if you're concerned about, holding information back, anything like that, that's not appropriate because if we need to, we can protect you if there's some information you need. But I am getting a sense that you're not telling me everything, okay? And I really need you to get past that, okay? They're kind of, it seems like they're berating this poor girl. Harmon said, Schultz says, what did Nate tell you about what they did? This is like the third or fourth time he's asking her. Harmon said he didn't really, no one would really go into details. Like they were keeping a big secret. No one would really tell anybody what they did, really. He just said that they would go do stuff. Schultz said, but what do you remember them saying? I hear from you that they're not telling you everything they're doing, but they're telling you something. Harmon says that they all hung out all weekend long. Like he told me over the weekend while I was talking, telling me that he hung out with all of them all weekend long and they played games, and he doesn't tell me what kind of games. Schultz says, okay. Was this Monday when he was talking to you before the shooting? Or was this, yeah, it's Monday. I was like, what'd you do over the weekend? He's all, we went to prom. Unintelligible. We just hang out all weekend. Did you go to prom? Yeah, they all went to prom, and Nate wasn't even going to go to prom. Then they decided the last minute they were going to prom. Do you know why he went to prom? He said that his date decided at the last minute. Who was his date? Some Stephanie girl. A senior also. I don't know. Did you see Eric and Dylan at the prom? Harmon says, yep, they were all wearing top hats. So she's stating Eric Harris was at the prom. What time did you see them there? I know they were there at 11. I don't know what time exactly. What time do you remember seeing them? I saw them 11 at the dance, and then the dance ended at midnight. I think it ended at midnight. After prom started at 1. I think. Probably saw them around 1:30, 2, because I left at 2:30, I think. Do you know if they were still there or not? I have no clue. There was a lot of people. When I saw them, there wasn't that many people there. So where was the prom? The prom was at Denver Design Center. And the after prom was at the school. Main court or main gym. That started at 1 and it went till 5. You left at 2:30. Okay, she doesn't know if they were still there. Okay, we've talked Nate. Let's talk about Eric Harris. How well did you know him? Harmon says, I went to school with him for a while. I know his brother. Graduated in 96. His brother was a big-time, jock. And he used to play baseball, I guess. He just quit not too long ago. He didn't start dressing the way he did until his junior year. I guess she's talking about Eric Harris now. Did he ever talk about why he started dressing differently? Harmon says, I think it was just the family. More like, probably it was just because, family stuff. Tell me about that. I think being after, since his brother was a big-time jock, football player or whatever, he wasn't. I think his mom's parents' expectations were wanting him to be exactly like his brother, and he wasn't. They couldn't accept that. Did he tell you that? Harmon says, no, but I mean, that's what I kind of would think, from the way he had changed. What did you and Eric talk about? I asked him something about Rammstein. It's a group that I told you about, how they used to speak German to each other, and there's a line that they do say, "Da Chashma," and I asked him what it said, and it says, "You hate me." And that's one of their favorite songs they listen to. It's like a German band. Okay, what did you guys talk about? I asked him about what KMFDM is. He told me that's the name, the initial, because there's a special thing, that's what it means, but I can't remember what he said. He said they were coming or something, I can't remember, because I asked him about his hat, and I asked him that Monday, I can't really remember. So you did see him on Monday. I saw him Monday, yeah. And his hat had KFMDN on it. He always wore that. It was on the front part of the hat. Eric's hat wasn't curved. Dylan wore his hats backward, and I think it was blue with a B on it. So he wore his hat backwards, and Eric didn't. What color was Eric's hat? It was black with KMFDM in white. Did Eric tell you any of the conversations that you had with him up to and including Monday? Did he talk about anything that you think is related to what happened on Tuesday? Harmon says, no, we really didn't talk that much. I just said hi to him. They got mad at me one day. They were all making fun of me or something because I went in there and I didn't know that they listened to Rammstein stuff. And I was all do-ha, messing around with the song and stuff. And they were sitting there calling me names, cowgirl, and being weird to me. I don't know. But I mean, that's all the time. They were just playing, but they weren't. They really talked a lot. They really didn't talk to really a lot of people in class at all. What about people they didn't get along with? What did they do? Harmon says, I didn't really see who they didn't get along with. I've never seen anyone pick on them. I never have. I didn't see it. I can't think of anyone picking on them at all. I don't even think I really seen them ticked at all. I don't think I ever have. How about Dylan? Did you ever talk to him? I said hi to him. He gave me cookies. When was that? Probably a month or two ago. He gave me and Nate and Erica and Becca cookies. Miss Kelly told him to put it away. I mean, they were never really mean to me. Dylan was they were always pretty nice. He was really quiet. Why do you think that was? Because no one everyone was scared of him just because they're different. And I mean, I never seen any violent act come out. I mean, I wasn't really scared of him. I was just friendly to everybody. She's asking if she saw any of the Trenchcoat Mafia people talk on TV. Harmon says, I did see all the 3 guys they caught in the fields, but no, I saw Pat on Lisa. The Pat kid, I thought I saw him on Lisa yesterday and today. Pat McDuffie. Then I saw Joe something. He was one of the founders on Channel 9 today. Joe who? I have no clue. I think he's one of the dropouts. Just obviously talking about Joe Stair. What did they say on TV? Harmon says they just said that they knew that all the police knew they were doing bombs, the pipe bombs. There's a police officer that knew they were doing it, but he didn't. They all studied Hitler, but it didn't really go into it. They asked her if she had seen any of other Trenchcoat Mafia guys who looked older. Okay, Schultz says, I want to go back. You mentioned this on Tuesday. We haven't really dealt with it here. You said you saw somebody else when you came back to the school who was associated with the Trenchcoat Mafia. Who? Brian Sargent. Tell me again where you were. You're coming back in, what road you're on when you're coming back to the school. When I left the school, his car was gone. When I was leaving to go to lunch. Was it there earlier? I think so, because he picks up some girls during lunch. They're friends with everybody. Was he in classes? I don't know. I don't have classes with him. So his car was gone when you left. When you came back, his car was there. His car wasn't in the student lot. It had already been gone. But when I was coming back, he was in line somewhere. I think behind me. I can't remember exactly. But he was in line somewhere. The teacher told us to go back home, turn on the news. His car was in the lot, and that's the only white 4-door Accord in the senior lot. So she says he's got a very... he's the only one that has that car, so it wouldn't be difficult to identify. They asked him, did you see him in his car? Harmon says, well, if he's in line, he's got to be in his car. Did you see the driver who was in the car? So you didn't see him, just his car. Yes. Huh. Interesting. Okay, another interesting piece of information here. Have you heard... Brian asks, have you heard people making statements that they know somebody did something? Do you know a name of somebody that knows something? Do you know anything, like the people that know somebody that was involved in this or anything? Harmon says, I heard someone talking about how they had, one of the kids said there was a guy in a white shirt that was shooting. Someone identified him as redacted, but I can't remember who told me that. But somebody was telling me about that. Somebody identified as redacted who? Redacted in a white shirt. What kind of pants? They said he was camouflaged. Okay, but you don't remember? I don't know if you're talking about Brian Sargent here, because they asked her about Sargent before, but I guess this possibly could be Robert Perry as well, maybe Chris Morris, but they were referencing Sargent prior. The only one that was short and chubby was Brian Sargent. All of them were tall and skinny. Brian Sargent has brown hair. Okay. And he's a little chubby. I think he's got a little mustache. So it's kind of like a bowl cut, sort of. So that was that interview. Very, very long. She's identifying Brian Sargent. And she saw his vehicle, didn't spot him in the vehicle at that time. And then, of course, the Pauline Colby situation. That's the only day she ever missed. Weird. Her dad is signing her out within minutes of the shooting. Or if that's her forging, I don't know if they established that. He backed up her story, but did anybody else? Cara Sander, document 1121 to 1134. Report dated April 24th regarding the April 21st response to the command post at Columbine High School. Sergeant Chris Tomford gave me several names of individuals to contact for interviews. This is written by reporting officer Obama. Not Obama, Obama. Myself and investigator Dave Brooks contacted Cara Sander at her residence. At 10 o'clock, she had just been interviewed by Susan Rico, correspondent with the television program Extra. After Rico and her photographer left the Sander residence, investigator Brooks and I interviewed Cara Sander. Sander stated on the morning of April 20th, 1999, she and her friend Jennifer Tindle exited Columbine High on the south end, walked towards the senior parking lot. Sander said her car was parked in the parking space 220. Sander stated that as she and Tindle were walking to her vehicle, she heard about 15 shots within a couple of seconds. That's a lot of shots. She asked Tindle, Jen, was that gunshots? She then looked up and saw gunmen at the top of the outside stairs. Gunman, singular, which leads from the senior parking lot to the second level of the school. Sander stated the gunman was standing near the path that runs along the top of the hill. He was to the west of the stairway. She described the gunman as a white male with a very full face, quote, pudgy and overweight. Let me repeat that again for the coincidence theorists. White male, very full face, pudgy, overweight. Now, who would describe Dylan Klebold or even Eric Harris as pudgy and overweight with a fat face? On the other hand, Brian Sargent fits that description. Curious, very curious. Gunman had dark hair, possibly 1.5 inches long. So yeah, not that long. He had dark eyes and dark, thick, bushy eyebrows. Again, who does that match here? Who has the thickest, bushiest eyebrows of all the individuals here? I mean, you could maybe say Dykeman's got some serious eyebrows, but he's skinny and tall, 6'2", narrow face, not round, pudgy, and overweight like Brian Sargent. Obviously, Dylan and Eric don't fit those descriptions. Maybe Joe Stair's got a bit of eyebrows, but yeah, nothing like Brian Sargent. And Eric Vike also at 5'7", and he's rail thin, like a toothpick, so not quite. Who matches this description? Brian Sargent is pretty much the only individual we have matching this description. Okay, he was wearing a long black trench coat that appeared to be closed. He was holding a gun, which he described as fat and large, long and wide. The gunman was holding the handle section of the gun in his right hand. Is Dylan Klebold left-handed? The gun was positioned across his chest. She noticed that the gunman had a blank look on his face, was silent, and had no expression. She said she did not take notice of any jewelry, hat, or mask on the gunman. The gun was one color. She believed it was grayish. Sander stated that there was a white male standing a few feet from the gunman. She stated that the male had no facial hair, was wearing a white t-shirt, short-sleeved, possibly with some red and black writing on the front. She said that this male did not appear startled or scared in any way by what the gunman was doing. She said the white male was standing to the gunman's left. The white male was standing between the gunman and the top of the stairs. Sander said she heard a shot coming from the gunman, which hit an unidentified white female who was near the curb on the north side of the student parking lot. The female was described as white female, possibly 5 feet, with blonde hair. Sander stated the injured female fell onto her knees. Initially, Sander thought the girl had tripped, but then realized the girl had been shot. 2 unidentified females not far from the injured girl began to run towards her to help her. The first of these 2 girls was described as a white female wearing a white shirt and a denim jumper skirt, possibly with light brown hair. Second female, Sander could not recall a description of. Sander said before the 2 girls were able to get the victim up, a male student went to the victim and attempted to lift the victim up. She described this male student as being a white male wearing a dark shirt. This male tried to pick up the injured girl by placing his arms underneath her arms. More shots were fired. Sander stated that she and her friend Tindle ran to her car and got inside. She then put the car in reverse, pulled out of the parking space. She exited the parking lot and drove south on South Pierce Street. Sander did not see the gunman again after she got inside the car. She stated she did not hear any more gunshots after getting in the car. Sander and Tindle drove to Tindle's house, where Sander phoned her mother to tell her she was all right. Mrs. Sander was present during my interview with Cara Sander. Miss Sander stated at about 11:25 she received a phone call from her daughter. She stated Cara Sander told her there had been a shooting at the school and that this little girl was not getting up. Mrs. Sander stated her daughter described the suspect as being big, with bushy black eyebrows and very ugly. You know what's curious? Nobody really describes Klebold or Harris as ugly. Or really Joe Stair, Dykeman, Chris Morris, Heckler. Robert Perry and Brian Sargent are the only guys who are described as ugly by many, many different individuals. Curious. I asked Cara Sander whether she noticed anything unusual prior to leaving the school building and walking to the senior parking lot. Sander said she had been in the cafeteria having lunch and nothing appeared strange or odd to her. Sander stated she did not see anyone else in a trench coat and that she heard no one screaming prior to leaving the building. Sander stated on the evening of April 20th she saw pictures of the two deceased suspects, Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris, on the TV. She stated neither of these two suspects were the gunmen she observed at the top of the stairway, holding the gun that she saw after she exited the cafeteria. Let me repeat that again for the coincidence theorists. She said neither of these two suspects were the gunmen she observed at the top of the stairway holding the gun that she saw after she exited the cafeteria. She stated the suspect she saw had a fuller face with darker eyes and thick, dark eyebrows. We asked Sander to look through the Columbine High School 98 yearbook to see if she could identify anyone matching the description of the gunman she had observed. Sander looked over numerous photos and then pointed to a picture and said, "That looks like him." She stated that what stood out to her was that this person had the same expressionless face that she had observed on the gunman. I looked at the index of names associated with the photos on that page. The person in the photo that Sander pointed to was redacted. Photograph was on page redacted in the yearbook. A copy of that page has been made and is attached to this report. Let's see if it is. And it's actually not. They did not attach it to this report. Or in what was released. So that's one of the documents that is not released. I mean, Brian Sargent does fit in the redacted space as far as spacing goes. It's not a short redacted like Joe Stair, but... Okay, a copy of the... Okay, we asked Sander to turn back of the yearbook to see if redacted was in the group of individuals shown in the photo of the Trenchcoat Mafia. The photograph on page 268 of the yearbook. Sander turned to page 268, then began looking at the names of the individuals listed above the photograph. The list only gave first names. Sander quickly put her finger on the list of names and began to read them aloud. She read several names and then read the name redacted. Sander went back to the beginning of the list and counted the number of names. She came back to redacted. She said the number redacted. She then went down to the photograph and began to count from left to right. Redacted persons. On the number redacted, she stopped on the person in the picture who was redacted. When Sander's finger landed on the photograph of redacted, she put her hand over her heart and said, "Oh my God," and then began to cry. Sander expressed concern that redacted might harm her. So here she is, on April 21st, the day after the shooting. She is well aware that Harris and Klebold are dead, whether by suicide or some other means. They're dead, and she is very upset now, and she's crying because she's afraid that redacted might harm her. We're assuming here this is Brian Sargent that she has identified. Redacted photo shows him to be a more heavy-set individual with a round face, short dark hair, and eyebrows that are dark and could possibly be considered bushy. Sander added that the gunman she observed at the school appeared to have a very weighted down trench coat. She describes the coat as looking huge and heavy. Sander drew a diagram of the things she had observed and discussed with me in the interview. A Xerox copy of the diagram is included with the report. And we will get to Tindle's report next, but let's finish with Sander. This is April 29th report. Okay. April 21st, contacted by John Keekbush, who advised me to call Denise Morgan in reference to information. Okay. At this time, I contacted Denise Morgan by phone. She stated to me she has a friend who lives in the area and that her daughter attends Columbine. She witnessed some of the events. She wished to be interviewed by law enforcement. Okay, so this was Cara Sander. This interview occurred 8:40, 4:21. She was on the... Okay, Sander advised she was in the parking lot south side of Columbine High School walking toward a car when she heard 15 gunfire shots. And upon turning around and looking toward the school, Sander said she saw the suspects and only one of them was shooting at this time. So 15 shots in a couple seconds by one shooter. Sanders said she saw a blonde-haired girl shot in the chest. She saw one of the suspects on top of the stairs by the parking lot with a rifle that was black in color. Sanders said that she saw the pictures of the suspects on TV, and she advised me she did not feel that the pictures that were being shown were the suspects she saw, plural, so neither one of them. Neither suspect she saw is who she saw on TV named as suspects. I then asked Sander to describe the suspects. She stated she could describe one of them, and she advised that he had a full face, pale complexion, dark short hair, brown eyes, wearing a black trench coat. During Sander's description of her location and the suspect's location, she indicated she was about 100 feet from the suspects when she saw them. But she stated she feels she could ID them if she saw some photographs. So here is yet another one of dozens of students who is offering that she might be able to ID who she saw, knowing full well that Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris are dead and have already previously been identified, so nothing to do with the suspects they saw. Due to this, I contacted Lieutenant John Kikebush and Sergeant Chris Tomford, advised them of what Sander had told me, in which time they advised me they would immediately send out another investigator, who I later learned was Investigator Diane Obama, to Sander's house to do a more in-depth interview. Okay. So I guess this is out of order because we were going over that. Okay, so here's a May 10th report by Detective Joe Montoya, Denver Police Department. Document 1130. Sanders said she saw redacted shooting at students outside of the school April 20th. She said he was wearing a black trench coat and had a long gun. Sander was able to pick redacted out of a photo lineup. Details. Cara Sander is a first-year student, Columbine High. At the time of the shooting, she was outside of the school on the west side. She heard 15 shots. At first, she thought they were firecrackers, but then she saw the two gunmen standing at the ledge over the outside eating area. She was approximately 30 yards from the gunman at the time. Sanders said one male was wearing a white t-shirt, the other was wearing a black trench coat. She made eye contact with the male in the black trench coat and said that he was redacted. So she made eye contact with the individual. It wasn't just a brief glimpse while running. Sanders described the male in the trench coat, redacted, as a heavy-set male, which was kind of tall and had thick black eyebrows. She said that he was wearing a black trench and was shooting a long gun. I asked her if he was wearing hat or gloves. She said no. No hat, no gloves. Cara said that she did not know who Redacted was prior to the shooting. She first learned his name when she picked his picture out of the Columbine High yearbook for Detective Obama of the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department. Also, if you recall that report, she started crying and in fear when she did so because she knew he was still alive. Sander picked Redacted out of a photo lineup for the detective on May 7th. She stated that the picture in the lineup was different from the one in the yearbook. So here is the October 6th report regarding the October 6th interview. Follow-up interview with Cara Sander, Jefferson County Sheriff's Office South Substation, in reference to the shooting, Columbine High 420. Sander told me on 420, just prior to the shooting, she was with a friend of hers by the name of Jenny Tindle, who was also a Columbine High student. Cara Sander said they exited Columbine High together through the doors located on the south side of the cafeteria. She said they began walking toward the student parking lot south of the school. Cara said as they approached her vehicle, parked number 220, she heard approximately what sounded to her like gunshots. Cara said she heard approximately 20 of these shots. She said these shots were fired in rapid succession. Again, it would be very helpful for someone to have her listen to full auto fire and semi-auto fire from different weapons so she could identify what she heard. Cara said when she looked toward Columbine High, she saw two male subjects standing approximately 100 yards away to the west from the outside stairway near the cafeteria commons area of Columbine High on a grassy hill. She described these males as the following. Subject 1, white male, black trench coat, black pants. She did not see this subject wearing a hat. Let me read that again. She said she did not see this subject wearing a hat. Cara said subject number 1 was carrying a weapon that she described as approximately 2 feet long, large in size, boxy, and said subject number 1 held this weapon across the front of his body and said he had it pointed downward. Does that sound more like an assault rifle than a shotgun? And how fast can someone actually fire a shotgun? I suppose that boxy weapon could possibly be Harris's rifle. But this is the guy with the trench, not the guy with the shirt. Subject 1 held his weapon across the front of his body, had it pointed downward. She said, Subject 1 shooting this weapon in an unknown direction at an unknown target. Cara said Subject 1 is the suspect she later identified as redacted. Sander said Subject 1 appeared to be calm with a blank expression on his face. It's interesting, too, because Harris and Klebold are described as being happy and having the time of their lives, shooting everybody. So I don't know how many, if they did not act alone, were other individuals more somber in this execution. Cara Sander said subject number 2 was standing approximately an arm's length away from subject number 1 and to his left. She described subject number 2 as being a white male, 5'10 to 5'11", tall, weighing approximately 205 to 210 pounds. She said he was wearing a white t-shirt and said also that subject number 2 had dark hair and said it was either dark brown or black, and said his hairstyle was a type of bowl cut as far as she could remember. So subject number 2 is not, Brian Sargent is the one with the bowl cut. Is she identifying Sargent and somebody else? She said subject number 2 had pale-colored skin, chubby face, possibly had bangs that hung approximately halfway down his forehead. That is all, of course, consistent with Brian Sargent. Well, she did say neither one of them were Eric Harris or Dylan Klebold, so interesting. Cara said subject number 2 did not have a firearm or any other items in his hands that she saw. She said laying on the ground between subject number 1 and 2 was a black duffel bag. Cara said she was not positive that subject number 1 and number 2 were with each other due to the fact she did not see them communicate between them. However, she said when the gunshots went off, subject number 2 was not afraid. She said he did not try to leave the area at the time and described him as being calm with a blank expression on his face as well. Cara said this is why she believes that subject number 1 and subject number 2 were together. After hearing the initial gunshots, Jenny Tindle and her got into her vehicle, rolled the windows down so they could see and hear better what was going on due to the fact that her vehicle had tinted windows. Cara Sander said after rolling the windows down, she heard more gunshots and said she saw a blonde female fall to her knees outside of the cafeteria commons area to the west. Cara said she and Jenny Tindle exited the parking lot of Columbine High in Cara's vehicle and drove southbound on South Pierce Street toward the subway at Columbine and Pierce. Cara said they did not go to the subway, but instead turned around to go back to Columbine High. She said neither of them still could believe what they had just seen occur at Columbine High School. Wait, what? Why would she go back to Columbine High School? Or not, does that mean at the perimeter, not actually going into the school, just waiting at the perimeter to see what was going on? Cara Sander told me prior to April 20th she did not know who Redacted was, nor did she know the name of Redacted. Cara said, in fact, up until Jeffco investigators Obama and Brooks interviewed her and asked her to look through the Columbine High yearbook, the date of that interview was 4/21, to try to identify who subject number 1 was. She had not seen Redacted, nor had she seen a photograph of him. Cara said when she picked Redacted photograph from the 99 Columbine High School yearbook, this was the first time she had seen a picture of him and learned his name. I asked Cara how certain she was that the person she described as being subject number 1 was in fact Redacted. Cara said without any doubt she is 100% certain that the person she saw and described as subject number 1 was Redacted. Let me read that again for the coincidence theorists. Cara said she is 100% certain without any doubt that the person she saw and described as subject number 1 was Redacted. Cara said she would not care if Redacted had alibi witnesses or if physical evidence and witness statements indicated Redacted was not present and was not involved in the shooting on April 20th at Columbine High. Cara said she would continue to believe subject number 1 was Redacted and none of that would change her mind. So good for her for sticking to what she saw, or at least what she believed she saw. She would not be gaslit. She refused to be gaslit by investigators. Cara Sander told me she had been receiving professional counseling since the shooting. She said she does not know, however, if this counseling is helping or not, and told me she continues to have problems with nightmares. She said that the first few It would also be curious to see who she sees in her nightmares, because if she's 100% sure she knows who she saw, the nightmares could even be, I mean, obviously there's post-traumatic stress disorder, but how much worse is it if you think the guy that shot at you is actually still alive and not even declared a suspect? She said the first few weeks after returning to Columbine High in August were especially difficult for her and other students. She told me that the students going in and out of Columbine High no longer needed to show their ID, and said anybody can walk in or out of the school without being questioned or asked for ID. She said this makes her both angry and afraid at the same time. It should be noted that while interviewing Cara Sander during this interview, she had a very difficult time talking to me about the incident, especially in the beginning of the interview. Cara would break down and begin to cry. After I talked to her for a while, she became more at ease with this interview. Cara did tell me she very rarely talks about the shooting incident with anybody, including her friends, and she said, however, she has talked to her father about it. I gave Cara Sander my business card and told her if she wanted to speak with a victim advocate in the future, call me, I'd make the arrangement. She also said her friend Jenny Tindle may want to speak to me about the incident. She said Jenny would give name, number. Okay. Additional information, Cara Sander told me that who she described as subject number 1 and who she described as being the gunman outside of the cafeteria commons area of Columbine High looked huge. She believes subject number 1 took on this appearance because he was wearing a trench coat. Cara said the trench coat seemed to be full of something he was carrying in it. Okay. Is that attempting to make it look like he wasn't overweight and the trench coat made him look bigger, even though she clearly identified his face and made eye contact with the individual? Man, so she was clearly upset, breaking down crying, but at the same time refused to be gaslit. And she said no matter how many witnesses, no matter how many alibis, she knows what she saw. I mean, that's conviction. And it's not really that surprising. I mean, 90% of people, 95% of people would break under questioning with authority figures, especially impressionable teenagers. You really got to admire, right or wrong, mistaken or not, you have to admire these teenagers that refuse to be intimidated and gaslit by investigators. Even if they're wrong, they know what they saw, and they're sticking to it. I mean, and that's pretty admirable, especially for people that went through such a tragic and traumatic event. Let's go to Jennifer Tindle's account, which starts on document 1224. So she basically has the same account. Male wearing black trench coat walking up the stairs next to the building. She noticed another person standing on the hill. Actually, maybe slightly different. So initial interview April 20th between 12:30 and 2 p.m. Follow-up interview April 27th. This is document 1225. Tindle stated she and Cara Sanders left the school cafeteria, headed for the school parking lot located on the southwest side of the school, when she heard what she believed to be firecrackers. Tindle turned toward the school, saw a male wearing a black trench coat walking up the stairs next to the building. Tindle said she noticed another person standing on the hill. The person was shooting at people in the parking lot with a very long black gun. Tindle recalled wondering why the shooter was not shooting at the person in the black trench coat. The shooter was approximately 6 feet tall, thin-build, brown hair, wore a white t-shirt. Tindle approximated the distance between her and the shooter as being about the length of the school's gymnasium floor. She saw the shooter fire and hit a girl in the leg. Unidentified. Okay, the girl fell to the ground. Unidentified male student tried to assist her. The unidentified male then ran back into the school. Tindle assumed he was going for help. According to Tindle, the male in the black trench coat looked in the direction of Clement Park while the other male continued shooting. Tindle said she and Cara Sanders ran to Sanders' car and drove away. Document 1226, date of report May 12, 1999. Detective Montoya. Jennifer Tindle was in the senior parking lot when the shooting started. She did get a look at both shooters, but could not make a positive identification on either one. See, if this really was Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris, she would have been able to identify them. And let's see, because again, if you want to say Cara Sander was just that emotional, she couldn't handle it, she was seeing things, let's see what the girl with her said. Jennifer Tindle was with Cara Sander in the senior parking lot when the shooting started, April 20th. She was approximately 30 to 40 yards to the south of the shooters at the time. Tindle said the first she thought the shooting was a prank, then she saw a blonde female get shot and fall down in the Commons area. At that time, she and Sander made it to their car, left the parking lot area. Tindle said that she first observed the suspect standing at the top of the stairs that overlooked the Commons area. She described him as a thin white male with brown hair, wearing a white short-sleeved t-shirt and tan pants. Let me read that again. Thin white male, brown hair, wearing a white... So this is not the... is this the suspect or the... which guy is this? She described him as a thin white male, brown hair, white short-sleeved t-shirt, tan pants. She then saw the second suspect run up the steps and stand next to the suspect in the white t-shirt. She described him as a heavy-set male. Heavy-set male. Who does that sound like? With black hair that was possibly pulled back into a tail, wearing a long black trench coat that was buttoned up. Okay, well, Dylan Klebold does not have a ponytail. Joe Stair might. Robert Perry might. Brian Sargent does not. Wearing a long black trench that was buttoned up. Tindle saw that the male in the white t-shirt shooting a long gun toward the parking lot and Commons area, but she never saw the other suspect shoot. She did not get a look at the suspects' faces, but insisted that neither suspect she saw was Eric Harris or Dylan Klebold. Let me read that again for the coincidence theorists. She insisted that neither suspect she saw was Eric Harris or Dylan Klebold. So she didn't get a good look at them, but she got a good enough look that it doesn't match Eric Harris or Dylan Klebold. I showed Jennifer Tindle a photo lineup containing a photograph of Redacted. Tindle picked out Redacted as possibly being the male in the black trench coat. I asked Tindle how she was able to pick out Redacted if she did not see the suspects' faces. She said that his build looked similar to the male in the trench coat. Realizing that you cannot see a person's build in a photo lineup, I concluded that Tindle could not positively identify Redacted as one of the shooters, but she admitted she couldn't. She just said it looked like him. All right, let's look at this follow-up report, April 26th, regarding the 21st interview. Okay. White male, black trench coat, standing on top of the hill to the right of the stairs near the cafeteria. Described the subject as tall, with wide, broad shoulders, black hair in a ponytail, black pants, and no mask. The subject did not appear to be holding anything at the time and was facing away from the student parking lot. Jennifer said she saw another white male standing to the right of the first subject, close to the building. This second subject was wearing a white t-shirt, black pants, and appeared to be holding a black gun. This person had brown hair and appeared to be firing the gun in the direction of people eating outside on the stairs and the grassy area. She wasn't certain of the identity of the second subject, but now thinks it was Eric Harris after being told by fellow classmates that Eric Harris was wearing a white shirt. That's the only reason? A lot of people wear white shirts. That's weird. Jennifer said she is absolutely certain that the subject was wearing the white shirt, was holding the gun, and appeared to be firing it. As opposed to other accounts, of course, where the guy in the trench is firing the gun and the guy in the white t-shirt is not. So a couple of interesting comments here. I asked Jennifer Tindle what information she may have about the Trenchcoat Mafia. Jennifer said she did not have much information, but she did tell me she was afraid of the Trenchcoat Mafia students. She said none of the students had ever bothered her or harassed her, but she was still afraid of them. She would usually see the Trenchcoat Mafia students in the hallways of Columbine High, but did not talk to them. She said that the Trenchcoat Mafia students were distinguishable by their style of dress. She said that other than seeing them in the hallways, she would see them at times gather underneath the stairway or near the bottom of the stairs in the cafeteria. Tindle said they would congregate at that location. Jennifer Tindle said she had seen Brian Sargent with the Trenchcoat Mafia students in this area. She said Brian Sargent wore black clothing, but she did not remember if he wore a trench coat or not. And it's so they must have identified Brian Sargent, because why else are they only talking about him afterwards? Jennifer Tindle said she did not see any of the Trenchcoat Mafia students being harassed by other students. She did not observe the Trenchcoat Mafia students harass other students either. She told me she did not recall seeing any Trenchcoat Mafia students in the cafeteria area on April 20th, 1999. Jennifer Tindle said she knew of no one who may be manufacturing explosives, devices, and or possessing firearms. I asked Jennifer Tindle if she knew of anyone who had a double-pierced eyebrow, and she replied, yeah, Nate Dykeman. Jennifer Tindle told me that information on this came from her friend Christina, who had told her this. And I don't know how many witnesses reported somebody with a double-pierced eyebrow, because they seem to be asking this question a lot, as well as the tie-dye shirt question. Jennifer Tindle said that on April 20th, she saw the thought of the day on Rebel News Network. She said it said something to the effect of, you shouldn't be inside here today, it's nice outside. It's kind of weird how different people said they saw different things regarding the quote of the day. I guess if they weren't paying attention, it'd be difficult. Jennifer Tindle said that Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris were on the RNN staff to the best of her knowledge. She believed that on April 20th, an audition was held that day for staff members of the Rebel News Network? Tindle said her friend Lauren Beachman told her that she had auditioned along with Rachel Scott for the position on the RNN at Columbine High School on April 20th. Jennifer Tindle said Dylan Klebold was present during these auditions, according to Lauren Beachman. Wait, what? There were auditions that morning? I don't know if that's been corroborated by anybody else. And Rachel Scott had auditioned for these? So, it looks like Tindle did change her story. But this is way later now. This is a December 9th, 1999 interview. Traver contacted Jennifer Tindle at her residence with her mom present for the entire interview. At this time, Tindle stated that the picture she was shown of Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris did look like the individuals she saw outside the cafeteria at Columbine High School. Oh man, so she folded, and her friend did not. Curious. On December 9th, Traver contacted Jennifer Tindle at her residence. Tindle's mother is present. She stated she originally thought that the individual she had seen outside of the cafeteria at the bottom of the stairs was redacted. However, after discussing the matter with friends and her family and seeing pictures of Harris and Klebold, she believes that the two subjects she saw on April 20th outside the cafeteria were Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. So that's curious. Not that she changed her recollection. So she believes she saw Brian Sargent and another individual, but she discussed it with friends and family. So did they say it was just better to go along with telling the police whatever they wanted to? Is that why she told her story? Not because she truly believes that it really was Dylan and Eric. She stated that when she saw the subject at the bottom of the stairs, she thought he was fat because of the trench coat. She thought of redacted. She stated that this subject had a ponytail, but redacted did not have a ponytail. Also, neither did Klebold. After talking about the matter with her mother, she realized that if the subject had guns and other items concealed under the trench coat, it would give him a heavier or fat appearance. She said neither one of the guys were Harris or Klebold. And what would a bowl cut have anything to do with it? What's the explanation on the bowl cut? Tindle stated that although she did not know Harris or Klebold prior to the incident, she was fairly sure that who she saw after talking with friends and looking through the yearbook and seeing pictures of Klebold and Harris in the media. At this time, Traver submitted the photos from Packet A for Tindle's interview. Tindle stated that the image of Eric Harrison, 52, looked like the individual she had seen standing just to the east of the top of the west wide stairs. Also, the image of Dylan Klebold looked like the individual wearing a trench coat who went from the bottom of the west side stairs and walked to the top to talk to Harris. Prior to viewing the photos, Tindle drew a map where she saw both subjects. Okay. So they, and again, we don't know how many of these students were told by their parents to simply tell the police whatever they wanted to hear. Which again makes it impressive, the students that just did not fold to this pressure from authorities, that refused to be gaslit. Very, very curious. Very, very curious. I mean, there's definitely something weird going on. I mean, that much is for sure. Let's go to Trent Carnes, 912. All right, so this account is curious. Carnes drove his own car to school, parked along the south fence, space 276. Normally finishes after his fourth class. However, he was caught smoking on the grounds and was assigned 5 hours of cleanup duty as punishment. Carnes was directed to the cafeteria for the cleanup duty. Carnes first called his mother and asked her to bring a lunch for him at 11:15. Carnes arrives in the cafeteria and began walking through the picking up some trays. When two friends, Mindy Pollock and Pete Evans, asked him for a ride, Carnes told them he has to stay in the cafeteria, then return to his duty. Carnes saw Pollock and Evans hanging around the store, and changing his mind, he decides to give him a ride home. Carnes, Pollock, and Evans left through the student's entrance next to the student's store. Then all three walked to his car and got in. Carnes heard several pops and thought at first there was construction going on, then realized there were gunshots. Carnes turned around and saw two gunmen standing at the top of the stairs. Carnes described one gunman as a white male, 6'2 to 6'3", thin, with medium brown shoulder-length hair, wearing black pants, black trench coat, possibly a white shirt, and a black leather cap. Carnes thinks he can identify this gunman, but does not think he was one of the suspects pictured on television. Let me repeat that again. Carnes thinks he can identify the gunman, does not think he was one of the suspects pictured on television. Carnes describes the second gunman was leaning over the railing, firing at students on the ground. White male wearing a white dress shirt, not t-shirt, a dress shirt, black slacks, and a black vest with ruffles on his shoes. That's very specific, ruffles on the shoes. Carnes did not see his face very well. Curious. Carnes was about 80 yards from the gunman. Drove out the lot, took Pollock and Evans to a location near South Pierce, started to drive back to school, but was stopped at Weaver by the roadblock. Carnes has seen the suspect in the trench coat at school before, but not this school year. Curious. So he's saying it's someone from the previous year? Could that be... there's a number of suspects there. Carnes did not notice any duffel bags in the cafeteria. Carnes took his backpack with him. That's curious. So almost none of the students saw duffel bags, and this guy was specifically cleaning up the cafeteria, so he was looking more closely than other students just coming and going and sitting around. That's very curious. That is very curious. Carnes knows of the Trenchcoat Mafia, but does not know any by name, does not associate with them, and has never spoken to them. Carnes thinks that a girl that lives up the street from Travis, Rachel, has a brother who is an associate of the Trenchcoat Mafia. Okay, so here's the typed up report. It's dated April 26th regarding April 21st interview. Officer Felsochi. Okay, between 11:15 and 11:20, he heard gunshots coming from the building. At first, he thought it was someone roofing because he heard 6 to 7 rapid gunshots. He informed me that he then turned around, looked toward the cafeteria, and observed a person standing on top of the exterior stairs located on the northwest corner of the building. He stated this person was holding a rifle, leaning it on the fence, and shooting down towards people eating lunch outside the cafeteria. He informed me that this person was a male dressed in a white dress shirt, black dress pants, so not jeans, not cargo or camo, black dress pants, and a thin black vest. He stated that another male was with him wearing a black trench coat and black pants and had long hair and sunglasses. He stated he had seen this person before in school. He stated that the first male in the white shirt would fire the rifle, then the male in the trench coat would take 3 or 4 steps down the stairs, look at the victims, then run back up to the person with the rifle. He stated at that time he would see the person with the rifle fire 2 to 3 more shots, then the male in the trench coat would go back down, look at the victim, and come back up. He stated he saw 2 bodies laying down outside the cafeteria. Now, does this description match anything else we've read before? This clearly seems to be different individuals with a different MO. Another report here prepared by investigator Jill Rudler. He said the guy on the left was wearing black pants, a trench coat, sunglasses, and had brown hair, and was wearing either an English-style leather cap, would that be a beret, with some kind of short visor that snaps, or a ball cap. He said that Mindy said she thought he had a handgun, but he didn't see one. Mindy was with him. Trent said the guy on the right had a semi-auto rifle and had its setting on the chain link fence. This guy was wearing black dress pants like Dockers, a white short-sleeved shirt, and a black dress vest over the short. Trent said this guy was shorter than the other. He said he did not get a look at this guy's face, but he thinks he had seen him hanging around with the Trenchcoat group. Trent said he saw one kid running backwards up the hill with a smile on his face. He said that the kid was wearing a white shirt and faded blue jean shorts, and he just sort of stopped to watch. Trent said that he didn't think that the kid was part of anything, just that at first they thought it was a joke. He said that he saw other people running that were smiling. That's weird. Would they still continue to laugh and smile after this whole thing? I mean, I don't know. That's weird. That's all we have here. There was no follow-up interview. So not a definitive ID, but very curious. Very curious how a lot of individuals simply do not believe that these people they saw were the ones on TV. Let's go on to Mindy Pollock's account, 10,009. It's actually 10,093. I mean, it's actually 1,093 is her account. Pollock found Trent Carnes to give them a ride to Vitali's car. Evan Vitali was the other guy. Pollock was a sophomore and ditching her 5th period class at approximately 11 a.m. on April 20th. Is that curious? And again, we really need to compare what is the frequency of ditching of that class versus other classes on that day versus other days. Just curious. Pollock, Vitali, and Carnes left the school through the south double doors leading to the senior parking lot. Pollock was about to get into Carnes' vehicle when she heard a noise that sounded like firecrackers. Pollock saw a man running up and down the stairs on the south side of the school. Pollock also saw a man standing at the top of the stairs shooting people. Pollock stated that she believed she was watching a skit and did not think that what she was witnessing was real. Pollock turned around as the vehicle left the parking lot and saw people running. Pollock advised that she became suspicious when they passed a police car as it turned its lights on. When a second police car passed with its headlights on, Pollock realized that the scene at Columbine may have been real. So she thought it wasn't real all the way up through the vehicle already exiting the parking lot and driving. Pollock described the individual that ran up and down the south stairs 2 or 3 times as follows. Man wearing black pants, black shirt, black hat backwards, black trench coat, and carrying a silver handgun. Pollock advised that she did not see the man on the stairs fire his handgun. Pollock described the individual at the top of the stairs shooting people that were outside eating lunch as follows. Man wearing black pants, white shirt, black suspenders, hat, and carrying a huge black gun. All right, it's about to get interesting. So moving on, document 1095. Date of interview, May 4th, 1999, approximately 9:45 a.m. This is Agent Jerry Means and Larry Brown, Colorado Bureau of Investigation. Parents were present during the interview. Okay. Pollock stated she was outside the school when the shooting started. She stated she was walking across the parking lot with Trent Carnes, John Cook, Michael Johansson, and T.J. Levitt. Pollock stated she heard the shooting, turned around, saw 2 people with guns on the West Hill area of the school. She stated she and the friends she was with watched the shooters for approximately 2 minutes. Wow. That's a long time. So one guy is constantly running up and down the stairs, checking how many people got shot, and then reporting to the guy shooting. She stated she thought the shooting was a senior prank. Pollock stated she saw one gunman near the bottom of the concrete stairs near the west access door to the cafeteria. In this report, the gunman will be referred to as number 1. She stated the second gunman was standing near the top of the concrete steps. In this report, that gunman will be referred to as number 2. Pollock stated she recognized the lower number 1 gunman as redacted. She stated on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being uncertain and 10 being positive, she was 8 to 9. It was redacted. She stated she knows redacted from last year and does not remember seeing him since. Is that Joe Stair? The following is a physical description of the man she saw with a gun. Number 1, he had on a black trench coat that extends to between his knees and ankles, made of a cloth. Tight material. Coat was open, no patches. Black baseball hat, backward position, long face, pointed nose. He looked like a giant rat. He had a light complexion and a mustache. Is that Joe Stair more than Dylan Klebold? Dylan Klebold does not have a mustache. What is going on? He had a black shirt. She noticed no writing on the shirt. He had a silver-colored handgun in his left hand. She stated the gun was sort of flat on top. She noticed nothing around the neck. He had black pants, not jeans, no pockets, because the pants were covered up with the coat. The leg of the pants were over the top of the black boots. Following the description of gunman number 2, looser-fitting black pants and black boots, white dress-type shirt with front buttons. Let me read that again for the coincidence theorists. White dress shirt with front buttons. Red hat on backwards. Let me read that again for the coincidence theorists. Red hat, not black, red hat, holding a long black gun. Who are these people? So she said her and her friends watched the lower shooter run up and down the stairs a few times and they thought it was a game. She stated they got in their car and left. She stated they did not realize the shooting was real until they were a couple of blocks from the school and saw several police cars with their lights on headed for the school. Pollock stated they turned around, responded back to the school, but the police had the area blocked. She stated she did not see any other people running from the school. Okay, weird. Let's look at this follow-up report dated October 21st, 99, regarding an October 8th re-interview. Her mother, Linda Pollock, was present during the interview. The purpose for the re-interview was to clarify Pollock's observations during the April 20th shootings. She told investigators she recognized the gunman near the top of the stairs as redacted. I asked Pollock to describe the gunman she thought to be redacted. Pollock stated that he was a really tall and skinny, wearing a long black trench coat, black pants, baseball cap on backwards. He had a black gun in his hand, like a little handgun. Pollock stated that when the shooting started, she was walking across the senior parking lot. She was near a light pole in the middle of the lot when she first heard the gunshots. I asked Pollock if she still believed that the gunman she saw near the bottom of the stairs was redacted. Pollock told me she still believed the gunman she saw was redacted. So this is October, and let's see how she handles the gaslighting. Pollock told me she had seen redacted several times at Columbine High School during her freshman year. Pollock is currently a junior. Pollock had not seen redacted since her freshman year. Oh, wow, so 2 years before? Pollock stated she has never seen Dylan Klebold before with the exception of media photos after the shooting. Pollock stated that a couple of days after the shooting, after learning through the media that Dylan Klebold was involved, she looked at his high school photo in the yearbook. Pollock noted that in the photo, Klebold had short hair. The gunman she saw had long hair. Based on Klebold's yearbook photo, Pollock concluded that redacted was the shooter she saw. So she's referring to Klebold as having shorter hair, because Klebold's hair is not extremely long. It's long compared to people with super short haircuts, like maybe Chris Morris at the time. It's more medium, really. Joe Stair has really long hair, though, and possibly Robert Perry. We don't know the exact length. Robert Perry's might have not been quite as long as Joe Stair's, but possibly a bit longer than Klebold's. Let's see how the investigators handle those statements. I then showed Pollock a series of photographs, 51, 52, 53, taken from the video camera in the cafeteria. After looking at the photographs, Pollock immediately pointed to a photo of Dylan Klebold and identified him as the shooter she saw at the bottom of the stairs. Pollock also immediately recognized the gun in Klebold's hand as being the same one she saw the shooter with. While looking at the photographs, I also explained to Pollock that the gunman she saw at the top of the stairs was in fact Eric Harris. Pollock did not dispute that. The interview was concluded with Pollock understanding that the person she identified was redacted was in fact Dylan Klebold. There is no additional concerns in reference to the third gunman. So they successfully gaslit her, but here's the thing. Here's what's weird. So we don't know, again, the context of this conversation. While they were slapping the photos down on the table and telling her, you couldn't have seen this guy because this is the guy. There was already identified. We have all the evidence. This guy's got alibis. So they could have left all that out. It'd be really helpful to see. It would be very, very helpful if there was a video or even audio recording of these interviews. Video would be better to see the body language of the investigators because, as other students have said, the ones that refused to be gaslit and change their story, they said that the officers were intimidating them and trying to get them to go along and trying to basically gaslight them into saying they didn't see what they saw, as well as other students who they didn't even want to re-interview because they felt they would not be believed. Because there was clearly the air of some kind of a conspiracy or cover-up even if it was unintentional by the investigators, even if the investigators truly believed all these dozens and dozens, over 100 reports, all simply mistaken kids in a panic, even though a lot of these reports were taken before the shooting even happened by individuals who knew Dylan and Eric and these other individuals and clearly identified who they identified. So, yeah, very, very weird. Now, before Mindy Pollock was gaslit, let's look at some earlier statements. This is reporting officer Stalter's report, April 20th report here. Investigation, April 20th, approximately 11:30. Investigator John Healy and I were told by Lieutenant John Keekbush to respond to Columbine High, reference to a shooting that was taking place. Keekbush stated there were students in the school. Some officers were already on scene and had returned fire, and that the shooters inside the school were students of Columbine High. Investigator Healy and I responded and arrived to the staging area, South Pierce Street, south of Bowles, at 12. We were directed to assist in interviewing the witnesses that were on scene. At approximately 12:45, Investigator Dennis Gerlach and I were directed to Leawood Elementary, where a number of high school students had been evacuated to. I was told there were possible witnesses at that school. At 1 o'clock, I was directed to Mindy and Brad Pollock. Mindy Pollock is a student at Columbine High. Her father was with her. I asked Mindy what she had seen. So this is the earliest account. This is a day of account of Mindy Pollock. So before any gaslighting, before any intimidation, this is mere hours. This is mere hours, 2-3 hours. So these are the most fresh images in her mind. And at the time, she was not scared or panicked because she thought she was witnessing a video production. So there's no fog of war. There's none of this nonsense. She's clearly looking at a scene. She's not afraid. She fully believes it is a video production. No, she heard no screams. She doesn't know this is real in any way. And she observed these two gunmen for 2 minutes straight. So the typical coincidence theorists, strawmanning and fallacies trying to pretend that these are just scared kids that only saw brief glimpses and they didn't know what they saw. This is her account here. She and two friends walking from the south from the cafeteria to one of the friends' cars. This is Trent Carnes' car and a male friend of Carnes. She heard some sounds like firecrackers. She looked back toward the school, saw a white male, long black trench coat carrying a silver handgun running up and down the stairs outside of the school in the southwest corner. Pollock stated she saw a white male on the ledge with a long gun near the other male who was running up and down the stairs. She stated she heard what sounded like 5 firecrackers go off. Pollock stated when they looked at these two males, it looked like they were shooting at the kids who were eating outside of the school. Pollock stated she didn't hear any screams. Pollock stated she saw 2 males. Pollock stated she and the 2 males were discussing if they were making a video production for the school because it didn't sound like a real gunshot. I asked what the male who was running up and down the stairs looked like. She stated he was wearing a black trench, white male, brown or black, greasy hair with pointy features on his face, about 6'2", skinny or lanky. She stated she had seen him before in school and she thought he was either a junior or senior, but she didn't know what his name was. I asked what the male with the long gun looked like. She stated he was wearing what appeared to be black dress pants, a white dress shirt, black suspenders, had brown short hair, white male, approximately 5'8", and average weight. I asked what average weight meant. She said he looked like he had a bit of a gut. Now, would you describe Eric Harris as a guy with a gut? So let's see how close she was. I asked her if he just aimed at one place, and she said it appeared that he was moving it as he shot. I asked her if she could see any expression. She stated that he looked mad. I asked her how far away she was from these two. She stated that she thought she was about 25 to 30 feet away. That's pretty close. That's close enough to get a good look. And originally she said one of the guys was, I guess, Joe Stair, if that's the redacted name. Long hair, and Dylan Klebold does not have long hair, so that's how she concluded it was not Dylan Klebold. So she mentioned a gut. A little bit of a gut in that first interview. I believe that was her first interview. Let's look at Jason Brem's account, 7/19. So this was a re-interview May 5th. That's the first document that appears. So apparently his other documents have not been released from his original interview, which is curious, but in this May This is a May 5th report. This is an interview that took place May 3rd. Unless this was his first interview. Actually, it wasn't. Jason, okay, or I don't know. Jason reported Tuesday the 20th he had fifth period off, retrieved his soccer ball out of his locker, was walking west upper level entrance when he observed a party wearing a trench coat, black hat, turned around backwards, who was leaning against a green post that was anchoring a tree. John marked the exact location on a map, stated the person was a little shorter than himself. John is 5'11 or 6, and that he was wearing a black pair of boots, had black canvas between the sole and upper part. He noticed one of the boots had a pant leg tucked into the boot, which he thought was strange. Detective Demmel showed Jason photographs of Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold at the time, with Jason reporting that the party he observed wearing the trench coat had a very round face and was neither Harris or Klebold. The party felt very Jason stated the party appeared calm and relaxed and just appeared to be waiting for someone. The party had a black nylon bag with straps at his feet, 1.5 to 2 feet long. And we went over this account before. We don't know exactly who he's talking about, though. So, Karen Slizeski, 1161. It's actually 1166. This is an April 20th. Colorado State Patrol report. This is a Colorado State Patrol report. Summary, May 21st, 1999. Contacted Slizeski at her residence regarding information she might have of possible suspect accomplices. Slizeski stated she had been in school at Columbine all morning, April 20th, and had not noticed anything or anybody unusual. She arrived at school 7:30 a.m., went straight to her first period biology class. Her day continued uneventful through fourth period geometry, which ended approximately 11:10 a.m. Upon the completion of geometry, she went to her locker, which is located on the second floor near the gymnasium. She then went to the library to study. Shortly after arriving at the library, a friend, Matt Hardy, talked her into going to lunch with him. Slizeski stated Hardy's car was parked in the senior lot and they exited the school through the main west doors, then turned and walked down the steps leading to the cafeteria area. Upon exiting, Slizeski stated she noticed 2 individuals wearing black trench coats out in the field in the area between the equipment building and the soccer fields. She stated she did not pay much attention to them and only saw the individuals for a short time. The 2 males were at a distance, but thought they were walking towards Clement Park. She stated she recognized one of the individuals as Eric Harris, whom she had a class with last year. She described the other individual as looking big and fat, with dark hair. She stated she did not know Dylan Klebold. She did not recall if either individual was carrying anything. Once outside, she and Hardy walked to his vehicle, which was parked near the grass on the north side of the senior lot. Okay, they exited. She did not... Okay... While at the stop sign from the lot to Pierce Street, she heard what she thought was an explosion. She did not look back and had no idea what was taking place at the school. She was not sure the exact time she left school grounds, but it was approximately 11:30 a.m. Okay, that's not definitive. I guess that could have been Dylan Klebold, but in their movements that day, aren't they supposed to be shooting people at that time? Not walking to the equipment shed across a field? That's weird. Let's look at Steve Ogle's report, 1056. This is a Clement Park worker. So Steve Ogle's interview, April 22nd, by Gary Kleiman and Dwayne Eaton. Ogle had been out in the park on a golf cart with Dick Strange, a maintenance man for the Clement Park adjoining the school property. The investigators had information that Ogle was being given a tour and that he and Strange had observed at least one of the suspects involved in the homicide firing a weapon on the outside of the school. Investigator Eaton had made telephone contact with Ogle. Ogle agreed to an interview. Ogle advised the investigators he had been on a golf cart tour of Clement facility. When near the end of the tour, he and Strange were up on a football field and track looking around the park. He advised that they were at that location because it was a little bit higher than other parts of the park and gave them a good view. He advised that this was near the south end of the park and football field area. Ogle advised that he was looking toward the school, believed himself to be approximately 100 to 150 yards away from the school. He advised that it was a very nice day and he had observed approximately 5 to 7 students on the soccer field area below them. He stated that at one point he began hearing a popping noise and thought it might be fireworks, maybe a senior prank, due to the fact that it was near the end of the school year. He advised, however, that the popping sound continued, which led him to believe that it may not be fireworks. Ogle advised when he looked toward the school, he observed a white male near the corner or curved part of the building. It was later determined through school maps by the investigators that the person observed by Ogle was standing near a stairway between the library and cafeteria of the school. Ogle advised that it appeared that the white male was wearing a white dress shirt. When asked to explain the shirt in more detail, Ogle advised it appeared to be a shirt used by firemen and or policemen. Now, if you didn't know what kind of shirt you saw, you might just say it was a white shirt. You didn't really notice details, but so many people specifically noticed a button-up style dress shirt. Is that what Eric Harris or Dylan Klebold were wearing? Question for the coincidence theorists. He advised that the subject was moving his right arm around. It appeared he was holding his right arm with his left arm from below. Ogle advised that he looked long enough to observe that there was an object in the subject's right hand. He advised that the object appeared to be long, like some type of firearm, and longer than a pistol. He advised it appeared it might be a sawed-off shotgun. Ogle advised he observed the subject from the subject's right profile. He advised that it appeared that the subject was leaning against the building along the curved portion and pointing towards the parking lot or facing south. The investigators asked Ogle if he recalled the time that he had observed the subject. Ogle advised that he believed that he had observed the subject approximately 11:30. He advised that he believed that he and Strange were back at the maintenance shed for the park at approximately 11:40. Ogle advised that he in fact believed that the subject was firing a firearm towards the parking lot. He advised that at one point he observed numerous juveniles running toward the area of the park where he and Strange were. He advised the juveniles were yelling, "Call the police, call the police." Ogle advised the investigators that he believed they were the juvenile students who had eventually ended up at the maintenance shop for the Clement Park. Ogle advised the investigators that he had an unobstructed view of the portion of the school building where he had observed the subject firing the firearm. Ogle advised that he had a straight shot of the area of the school he was watching. He advised that originally the juveniles that came running toward them were not within his view. He advised that he believed that they had run through a lower area below the school, then came up a rise towards his location. Ogle was asked if he believed that he and Strange were being shot at any point. Ogle advised that he did not believe the subject with the firearm was shooting toward the soccer fields because the juveniles on the soccer field just stood around. He also believed that he did not believe the subject was shooting at them. Ogle advised he believed the shooter was shooting into the parking lot area of the school. So they became concerned for their safety. As they're driving back, there were students on the bleachers. He told them what was going on. Other students started running from the school. And Ogle advised as they continued to follow the sidewalk back to the maintenance shed, they observed no police vehicles in the parking lot area. He advised this only to let the officers know that he had observed a police vehicle in the parking lot between the school and maintenance shed earlier this date. He advised that it had been a green vehicle with fully marked police insignia on it, though he could not recall which police agency. Ogle advised that as he and Strange were arriving at the maintenance shop, they observed a police officer on a motorcycle arrive in the area of the school. He advised that it appeared the motorcycle was coming from the west. He advised he heard what he believed to be gunfire for approximately 20 minutes. He advised he also heard loud explosions, believed he heard the first explosion while he was on the football fields looking at the school. He advised he had not heard the first explosion until after the gunfire had started. Ogle also advised while en route back to the maintenance shed, he believes he heard 3 to 4 explosions coming from the area of the school. He advised he believes he heard maybe a total of 5 explosions in total. Then towards the end, investigators asked Ogle to once again describe the subject he had observed near the school shooting the firearm. Ogle once again explained what he believed it was a uniform-type white shirt being worn by the subject. So what's a uniform-type shirt? Like an officer's shirt for firemen or police or something like that? With a collar and buttons? That's weird. He advised the subject was wearing dark pants, but it is unknown if they were long or short pants. He advised it appeared the subject had dark hair. Ogle advised that the shirt stuck in his mind because he believed it had a higher collar than a regular t-shirt. He once again advised it looked like a uniform-type shirt. Ogle advised he was sure of what he saw due to the fact that he had really focused on the subject. He also reiterated that he had observed something long in the subject's arm going up and down. He advised that that object was dark in color. Ogle was asked if he had observed any flashing coming from the object. Ogle advised that he had not observed anything exit the object, but only heard the popping noise. He asked if he heard anything the juvenile said. He said that they said the Trenchcoat Mafia did it. Ogle advised that the juveniles were asked how many kids were involved in the assault. Ogle said that the juveniles told them that there was 50 who did it and claimed that they were Satanists. All right, so 50 might obviously be a gross over-exaggeration. But what's the difference between 50 and 2 and let's say 50 and 8? If there were 8 guys running around all over the place and not staying in one spot the whole time, they could easily appear to be 20, 30, or 40 people if they're running all over the place. Curious, no follow-up or anything. So what can we glean from that? He's dead sure he saw a high-collar, white shirt, dress shirt that officers or firemen wear. This is not a kid. I mean, this is an older man. Again, and at the time, he wasn't panicked. He wasn't even 100% sure the guy had a gun. He just thought it was strange. He was positioned like a gun, and he really focused on it. Curious. Very, very curious. And he's not the only one who claimed it was a dress shirt. Alicia Owen, 3982. Starts on 3980. Date of the report is April 30th. But the investigation here is stating May 4th, May 6th. Met with Alicia Owen and her mother. Alicia Owen confirmed she was in the cafeteria when the shooting started. So she arrived cafeteria approximately 11:15. She traveled to the cafeteria with her friend, Jenny Colby. She said that she purchased a pop, sat down, started to eat her lunch. She thinks that perhaps she ate her sandwich and had just started eating some chips when she heard a male voice yell, "Get down." She said at that time the entire population of the cafeteria started to get down on their chairs, and under the tables. She did the same and starting to question her friends and asking what was going on. She noticed then that people were near the windows, were crawling on the floor and pushing their way towards the stairs. Owen said that she peeked up from the table to look out the window. She saw on the hill area someone trip and fall down. She thought that it was Dylan. She said that he was wearing a black trench coat, black baseball cap, which he wears backwards. She said that she thought it was Dylan because of his curly hair. She could not see his hands, and she couldn't tell what he was wearing on his feet. She said that she also saw someone by the cars that were parked near the building. She said that usually Eric, Dylan, and Zach have their cars parked in the first spot. She interjected that she knew Eric and Dylan and Zach had arrived at the school at 04:30 hours to get those assigned parking spaces. They wanted to have the spots closest to the school at 4:30 a.m.? That's an interesting statement that she made. Huh. They got to the school at 4:30 a.m. to make sure they got those specific spots closest to the school. They wanted to have the spots closest to the school. Curious. Owen said that Zach drives a blue car, Dylan has a black Volvo or BMW, and Eric also drives a black something, which I guess he doesn't. She said there was one person standing between the two cars in the lot. She couldn't ID the person as they had their back to her, but thought they were wearing a black trench coat and looked heavier set and was wearing camel army pants. Who's that? Is that Brian Sargent? Heavy set? She said that she does recall there was a car parked in Zach's spot, which is the first spot, and Dylan's spot, which is the second spot, and she thinks the third space was empty. And who is the witness that saw Eric Harris driving away? Are they also talking about Zach Heckler? Heckler didn't seem to be as rail thin as some of the others, but people describe Heckler as maybe more heavier set. She then said she started to crawl up the cafeteria floor to the stairwell. She said she saw people going up the stairs, and she got up and ran. Okay, people were beginning to panic. She heard bombs. She said she was frustrated as she went up the stairs because the crowd wasn't moving fast enough, and then when she finally got up the stairs, she ran directly down the hallway and out the building. She didn't recall hearing fire alarms, but did say that she did hear gunshots and bombs as she was running out. The sounds were coming from behind her. Okay, she ran to someone's house, got a ride to Leawood Elementary. Okay. Owen estimated it took her approximately 10 minutes from the time of the incident until she was in Leawood Park. Owen said she knew Eric Harris. She believes in 8th or ninth grade she had asked him to a class dance. She said that he is nice. She said that he since has been in several of her classes. She was not in this particular group in class, did not know what his paper was about. Whenever she would hang around Eric, they were constantly joking around, saying things like, "I'm going to shoot you too." Owen said this was just their sense of humor. She did not feel threatened by the talk. Owen said that she had seen Dylan Klebold in the hallways and several weeks prior to the incident had talked to him about school. She said she was extremely surprised when it turned out it was Dylan Klebold involved in the incident because she described him as a nice guy. She wasn't surprised to find out that it was Eric Harris because he had a very dark side and he always kept to himself. I asked Owen to characterize her relationship with Eric and Dylan. She said they were more acquaintances than friends. She said she also knew Zach Heckler and that he had been in one of her classes, a PowerPoint class for physics. She didn't even consider herself an acquaintance of Zach and only that she knew him. Owen said she usually ate lunch with a group of girls who liked to associate themselves with the Trenchcoat Mafia. This was Nicole Marks, Krista, last name unknown, Alex, last name unknown, possibly Marsh, and Vanessa, last name unknown. She said that usually the talk at their table was about prom or social activities, and the only time she ever heard them talking about weapons was Alex and Vanessa joking about sword fighting. She further stated that Nicole, possibly Marks, was dating Chris Morris. Krista, last name unknown, was dating Eric, last name unknown, who always wears a beret. So that would be Chris Morris, not an Eric. Does more than one guy wear a beret? And that'd be curious. That would be curious. Owen said she had no problems with the Trenchcoat Mafia and had not heard of any other students having problems with them. Owen says that she does recall a pack, unusual backpacks or duffel bags. Owen said she does recall a pack near the table that was between her and the pop machines. She said it was very large on the floor and people were stepping over it. Curious. She said she remembers someone asking who it belonged to and no one answered up for it. She said several students tried to push it out of the way, but it was so heavy it wouldn't move or they didn't move it. Wow, that's curious. Owen's mother indicated at the end of the interview that they were also acquainted with Robin Anderson and Tiffany Burke. She stated that on the day the incident occurred, Alicia had been calling numerous friends to find out if they were okay that evening. One of the calls she made was to Tiffany Burke. She said that Tiffany was no longer a friend, but her name just appeared in the phone books that Alicia was using and she called her. She said that later when Alicia wasn't in the residence, Tiffany called and Kathy Owen asked her if she was okay. She said Tiffany's response was, "I wasn't there and I don't want to talk about it." In retrospect, Kathy Owen thinks this is an unusual statement. Alicia Owen could add no further information. Now, the reason why it's unusual, perhaps it was the tone. As if Tiffany Burke might know something. I don't think we went over Tiffany Burke's account, but let's see if there's any lead there. Probably not, but... So Tiffany Burke does have an account here, 6202, April 29th, 1999. On the 29th, Tiffany Burke was contacted in connection with Lead 2014. Tiffany provided the following information. She was not at school at the time of the shooting. She had gone to King Soopers to pick up some pictures. Tiffany had no relationship with Dylan Klebold. She had a philosophy class with Eric Harris. She described both individuals as very nice and polite. She could not believe that either one committed the crimes as indicated by the media. She has no other personal information to add to the case relating to Harris or Klebold. Tiffany stated that it was rumored through the school that a video showing the destruction of the school was to be shown over the RNN network. The network is the closed-circuit system in the school. She thought that the video showing was halted by the administration. It's unclear when was that supposed to be shown. Tiffany stated that she was been friends with Robin Anderson for the last 4 years. She had given an interview to Rocky Mountain News, which is part of an article for the April 29th edition. Tiffany stated Robin never commented about Eric, Dylan, weapons, or any plans to do any of the things related to the shootings. Tiffany was aware that Robin had an attorney and was possibly looking at charges. Tiffany had no other information. May 10th, Investigative report, Jacqueline Gee. Tiffany advised the following. Tiffany knew both Eric and Dylan from school. She knew Dylan through a friend, Robin Anderson, and hung out with them a couple of times between January 99 and April 99. During the time Tiffany was with Dylan, he never mentioned anything that could be related to the incident. Robin is still trying to figure this out and has not said anything to Tiffany about guns. Plans regarding this incident or comments made by Dylan relating to this incident. Tiffany denied having any knowledge relating to Robin providing Eric or Dylan with guns. Tiffany knew Eric because they were in the same philosophy class. She described Eric as somewhat antisocial and stated she has only had casual conversations with Eric in class, and he didn't say anything to her that is related to the incident. So that's about it. So was she just defensive because she thought people would ask her about Robin Anderson and the rumors going on with the gun situation, how she got guns for them? Who knows? Again, I mean, yeah, definitely nothing solid there. Nothing solid. Let's look at Nicole Ray's account, 4144. Looks like a May 5th report. Columbine High School student in cafeteria, 4th hour, table II with Naomi, Natalie, Lauren, Kelsey, Tina, and Bay. In cafeteria for lunch. Table II with, a bunch of people. Prior to 4th hour on the day of the shooting, saw a male student who was a big fat guy. Let me read that again. Big fat guy who wore chains and had his hair fashioned into horns by a locker along the South Science hallway between the interior science halls, as she thought the student used to hang out with Robert Perry. No duffel bag information. Heard Melissa Sauter talk in class after the shooting about how funny it was and that the victims deserved it. Heard from Daniel Romero that he and Tiffany Lean heard Melissa Sauter in class after the shooting say how she knew it would happen 2 weeks before. Witness said she was interviewed by an unknown detective about Melissa Sauter. Said a Patrick McDuffie is an ex-Trenchcoat student, and that Jennifer Fowler and Jessica Rush as associated to Trenchcoat students. When asked about Eric Harris, she said she had seen him around school, did not know his name prior to the shooting. She only saw him a couple of times and did not know anything about him. When asked about Dylan Klebold, she said she had never seen him, nor did she ever hear his name before. I mean, that just speaks to how big the school is and how many students there are. 2,000 students, even a 6'3" guy could go unseen by a lot of students throughout the year and years. Never seen him, never heard his name before. So the coincidence theorists really have a lot to explain when out of all these thousands of students, there seems to be the same circle of names coming up. She did not know Redacted. This is a long Redacted. When asked about Redacted, she said that she thought that was the student she heard people say hi to that was a nice guy. She described Redacted as looking like Dracula. She said this student wore black eye makeup. She did not know anything about him. You know, it's funny, if you actually look at Robert Perry, you could kind of sort of see a resemblance to Dracula. Huh, weird. Sort of Nate Dykman, too. I don't know why, just jumping out, but definitely Robert Perry. Actually, you know what? Joe Stair possibly a little bit, too, but... When asked about Redacted, she said that she knew his name from the yearbook and that she saw him around at school at times. She looked in the yearbook and said the person she thought she knew as Redacted was actually an ex-trenchcoat wearer named Patrick McDuffie. She said that she saw McDuffie on television talking about this shooting. She said that the Trenchcoat students would hang out under the cafeteria stairs. She said she saw a male student who used to hang out with Robert Perry on the morning of the shooting. She said she saw the student prior to the 4th hour by a locker on the south hallway of the science area between the interior science hallways. She said this student was a big fat guy who wore chains and fashioned his hair into horns. Nothing further. Let's look at April Bornhoft, 1449. So April Bornhoft's account seems to be missing. Her brother, Brian Bornhoft, said this, though. He wasn't on location. He was at Warren Tech. But Bornhoft indicated his sister saw a gunman standing over a dead body. He identified his sister as April Bornhoft. April saw the gunman when she was escaping from the school. This occurred right after the incident started. And in this forum account of April Bornhoft, she runs into the main hallway on the west side, sees someone standing over a body. He is dressed in a white shirt and possibly suspenders. I cannot find this account. It's listed as 1449, but actually, perhaps it's 14,049. And 14,049 also seems to be missing from Columbine report documents. Curious, what's in all these documents? And then we went over Mark Hengel's account with the overweight suspect, Kim Sander, 9829. So this report dated May 12th, 99 by Galagos. Channel 9 News, 12 p.m. Kim Sander called from home, said that her daughter was at the school and told her that the gunman she saw was 6'2", with bushy eyebrows, white male, ugly, wearing a trench coat. How many people have bushy eyebrows here? I mean, would you describe Dylan Klebold as having bushy eyebrows? I mean, from his prom pics and other pics, like his eyebrows are between thin and medium. I mean, I don't know how many people would call that bushy. Whereas you look at a guy like Sargent, perhaps a little bit more bushy. Nate Dykman. Maybe even Joe Stair. So, psychological profile here on this Tapatalk forum regarding the case against Brian Sargent. Timothy Rowell, document 4139, says Sargent secluded himself from everyone else. Peter Horvath, school disciplinarian, 5708. Harrison Klebold hung out with Sargent, who has a hot temper and is very volatile. Susan DeWitt, 6195, describes redacted 5'9", heavyset, straight brown hair in a bowl cut. Was on the news on April 20th wearing a striped shirt, friends with Perry, and had hatred toward everyone. Wow. Lee Patterson, 6996. In about April 98, Sargent got into a physical fight with Isaiah Scholes. Sargent finished the school year in 1999 with other students. And supposedly it was someone else who got into the fist fight with Sargent, not Isaiah Scholes. Ryan Poole, document 4097, said Brian Sargent and Robert Perry hung around Harris and Klebold a lot. Kimberly Carlin, 5239, says Brian Sargent is one of Harris and Klebold's good friends. Brian Sargent himself, document 8785, said that he doesn't know Klebold personally. So you have all these other witnesses saying that he hangs out with them and they're good friends. So Sargent's alibi, of course, is that he was at Burger King having lunch with Nicole Dickey and Frank Zerger. On the way back, their stop decided to give 3 students a ride out of the area. The other 3 students confirmed this. A pretty good alibi at first glance, although none of the other Columbine High School students, and there were many, having lunch at Burger King at the same time remember the trio. Huh. Plus, Zerger had to request psychological counseling after being interviewed, and Nicole Dickey may actually have been in the cafeteria when the shooting broke out. Huh. What the? This is curious. Okay. Brandon Riceback, document 5088, does not recall Sargent being in his first or his fourth period class on April 20th. Julianne Brunau, 2571. Sargent, Zerger, and Dickey gave her a ride at about 11:30 to 11:40. Does that give, is that enough time for Brian Sargent to do some shooting? Jonathan Owen, 3997. Brian Sargent gave him a ride out of the area at about 11:40. Nicole Dickey said she went to Burger King with Sargent and Zerger for lunch from about 11:15 to 11:45 a.m., document number 6317. Casey Hetzel, 6608, sees Sargent driving a Chevy Blazer in or near the Burger King parking lot with 5 other Trenchcoat Mafia members in the vehicle. So, In the Guardian Unlimited, April 22nd, 1999, reported that Nicole Dickey, 15, was in the school cafeteria when the pair burst in. But according to her, she's at Burger King with Sargent and Zerger from 11:15 to 11:45. DP.com also has, on April 21st, listed under suspects, Nicole Dickey, 15, a freshman who survived the Rampages outbreak in the school cafeteria. Whereas suspect's just the name of that article, has nothing to do with her. Paul Sealander, 9621, mentioning that Jennifer Harmon told him that she saw Brian driving around right after the shooting. Tad Bowles stated, 10,656, Sargent arrived at his house around noon with Zerger and Dickey. Bowles drove to Clement Park because Sargent was in a panic because he could not find a friend of his. This apparent concern for possible victims on the part of the shooters is an odd characteristic that is also shared by Morris and Perry. And of course, there are the students who described the Trenchcoat Mafia members as gloating when they were standing around. Weird. So again, I don't have the unredacted versions here. Supposedly, people are saying Brian Sargent is not on McDuffie's list of people involved. But I don't know how that could be determined for certain with all the redactions. Also, Brian Sargent was not banned from returning to class when school resumed at Chatfield High. Yet there were students who said they were afraid of him. It's weird. Chris Wishner was one of the students who stated that him and many other students will not return to school because some of the murderers are right there attending school. This was John Quinn's interview of Chris Wishner in the Rocky Mountain Horror Show. This interview is currently on cyberspaceorbit.com/Quinn_Colorado.html. Editor's note, Mr. Quinn has requested that readers no longer try to contact the Wishner family. They are very nice people, but are wary of calls. Copyright 1999. Update, interview with Columbine witness, more gunmen involved. Documents may link father to Eric Harris's activities. Gore in black trench coat. Authorities ignore facts, declare that the two acted alone. Interview, Littleton witness. I have conducted a telephone interview with Columbine High student and witness Chris Wisher on May 7th, 1999, and also spoke briefly with his father. So this is before all of the re-interviews and the gaslighting that occurred months later. I also spoke briefly with his father. I asked the father about Chris's statement from the day of the tragedy about a person being arrested being one of the gunmen. Mr. Wishner said they had spent 2.5 hours with the FBI, and apparently Mr. Wishner was reluctant to say too much as the investigation is ongoing. However, he did say that Chris and his family are doing everything they can to see that those responsible are brought to justice. Obviously, he's not referring to dead people here. I then spoke with Chris himself for about 40 minutes. Among his remarks and comments, Chris Wishner stated to me that he is certain that he and certain companions are absolutely certain that at least 3 perpetrators were involved in the mayhem at the school and have given their testimony to that effect. This was directly witnessed by them outside the school building. One of those witnessed was the person in a white t-shirt throwing bombs onto the school roof. Another one was someone other than Harrison Klebold outside in a black trench coat with a shotgun. Simultaneously, they heard shots coming from inside the school. Wishner also stated that he is personally acquainted with another witness who witnessed a group of 7 to 8 assailants in black trench coats with weapons upstairs at Columbine when Harris and Klebold were downstairs. He told me that there were many other witnesses to this. One thing which Chris did point out was the fact that he was slightly misquoted by AP as saying he's one of the ones who shot at us in reference to a student being arrested at the scene. What Wishner actually said, I think he's one of the ones who shot at us. The lack of certainty was due to the distance. I'm guessing he's talking about Chris Morris here. The lack of certainty was due to the distance involved and the fact that Wishner had personal knowledge of at least 2 or more other assailants other than Harris and Klebold. What's more, the person Wishner was referring to was wearing a black trench coat while being arrested, which means it was not the person in the black t-shirt also seen and photographed by the press being arrested later in the afternoon. So it's not Chris Morris. The list of apparent accomplices, some of which are surely senior control agents, seem to just grow and grow. Mr. Wishner Jr. further stated that he is personally acquainted with a witness who was blatantly coerced by sheriff's deputy investigators to change her testimony regarding additional gunmen. Every time she stated that she saw more than 3 people, they attempted to get her to change her testimony. What's more, I was told that a number of other witnesses Wishner knows also have been coerced by investigators into changing their testimony. Chris Wishner stated that many Columbine students, including himself, will not return to school because some of the murderers are right there attending school. This is yet another control element of this diabolically clever operation. What an extraordinary intimidation upon anyone who would say what they know, to have some of the perpetrators right there in front of you and know that investigating authorities incomprehensibly have cleared these murderers from any involvement, knowing that these participants in the slaughter are walking around with impunity and could obviously take measures to silence anyone. Although, to be fair here, again, I don't want to invoke the fog of war scenario, but I'm just going to ask a question. Is it possible there were other accomplices and individuals who technically didn't kill anybody? They might have been there, they might have fired guns, thrown some pipe bombs, maybe they injured some students, but perhaps they were only involved at the very beginning, then ran away. Can we say for certain, technically, that they ended people's lives? Obviously, if they were involved, they do need to be prosecuted. If they were granted immunity for information leading to whatever, closing the case to put a ribbon on it, so to speak, I mean, who knows? But is it theoretically possible that other accomplices might not be murderers? I'm just asking that question. Chris stated to me that he and another student and other students and witnesses know that a cover-up is going on in Littleton. He pointed out the fact that SWAT teams waited 4 hours before entering Columbine High literally proves that they and other authorities were well aware there were far more than 2 gunmen inside. Furthermore, Chris noted that he and other witnesses found it incomprehensible how 67 explosive devices could have been positioned in the building by just Harris and Klebold, and hard to figure out how not one of these devices was seen by anyone, no matter how many people had positioned them. Other than what would be called circumstantial evidence, the only solid evidence yet which I know of proving the investigators are intentionally covering up facts and are actively pressuring witnesses to change their story comes from my talk with Columbine student Chris Wishner. Wishner's statements to me are the single strongest proof so far that more than playing with the news being dribbled to the public, the authorities are actively, aggressively instituting a genuine cover-up at this point in time. That being the case, though I deeply empathize with the unimaginable horror these families have been through, I believe it is far more horrifying for them and our country as a whole that a cover-up about this gruesome madness is allowed to stand. How deep will their grief be knowing that the real truth has been buried, that some of the murderers of the kids have either disappeared or, unbelievably, back at school. Their kids have been brutalized yet again by a system bent on twisting the truth, utterly spitting on the graves of those lost, and protecting itself and its apparent complicity to whatever degree at all costs. I strongly urge witnesses and their families to maintain their position and refuse to give in under pressure to anyone in any position who attempts to manipulate and or coerce them. I would also strongly urge anyone who knows witnesses and or their families to bring up the subject of coercion of witnesses as soon as possible. Chris Wishner conveyed to me the pain and distress this outrageous and psychologically devastating coercion is causing many of the students he knows. What is this saying to our kids? If, on top of the savage horror they had to experience, they now have to see the truth about the murders of their friends and classmates covered up right before their eyes with the collusion of the press and silent acquiescence of a befuddled, distracted, and manipulated nation. Indeed, the bold-faced flagrancy of the cover-up at this point in time would indicate that it is not only intentional, but it is in fact itself part of the overall message. To wit, yes, your children will be murdered in their schools by a veritable team of executioners, and the eyewitness testimony of their schoolmates will be erased and made to forever disappear from the official story and from history right before our eyes and at the direct instigation of our authorities. This is totally unthinkable and unbearable. Where is the press on this story, and what kind of job are they doing? Who does the media really work for? Why is the Jeffco Sheriff's Department coercing witnesses? Who do they work for? It is curious because we have over 100 witness accounts that don't match the official narrative. So here's an interesting theory called the BK switch regarding Brian Sargent and his Burger King alibi. Star Viego reposted this here. Again, this apparently is just a theory. Officially, Brian Sargent left campus about 11:45 a.m. with Trenchcoat Mafia associates Frank Zerger and Nicole Dickey in Sargent's white four-door Honda Accord. They went to the Burger King at a nearby mall for lunch and were stopped by roadblocks on their way back to school. They picked up 3 other students, Jonathan Owens, Julianne Brunau, and Ashley Heish, and left the area. This occurred 11:35 to 11:40. Owens, 3996, and Brunau, 2570, corroborate this aspect of Sargent's story, and they added that Sargent picked them up in a small, compact car. Casey Hetzel was also at Burger King for lunch on April 20th. So, 6609. Hetzel stated while they were at Burger King, he saw several Trenchcoat Mafia members in a full-size Blazer or Explorer. He stated there were 7 or 8 people in the vehicle. He stated the windows were tinted and the only person he could make out was Brian Sargent. Hetzel stated his friend Paul Solon flipped them off. In a later interview, he changed the number of passengers in the Blazer to 5 or 6, but that's still 2 more than the 2, Dickey and Zerger, that he says he went to lunch with. Left unclear is whether Sargent was driving the Blazer at the time or was parked in the lot eating lunch with the unknown 5 to 8 Trenchcoat Mafia members. Unfortunately, corroboration is lacking. There is no interview in the 11K for Paul Solons, and the other people in Hetzel's group, Jonathan Schlott and Joshua Churchman, were apparently not asked about it. However, Stephanie Haney, document 835, has seen several of the Trenchcoat Mafia students and their associates in a red and black full-sized Chevrolet Blazer. Stephanie said she believes the described vehicle belongs to Brian Sargent. If Hetzel's story is true, and he seems pretty certain about what he saw, then it blows a big hole in Sargent's alibi. Moreover, his alibi witnesses may not be as reliable as they sound. Nicole Dickey makes it sound like Sargent and Zerger picked her up around 10:50 to 10:55 a.m., 20 minutes earlier than claimed. Frank Zerger, 7412, though he never got closer to the carnage than the BK broiler in front of his face, felt the need to request counseling services after his April 28th police interview. Maybe something scared him. Also, Jennifer Harmon, 6560, says she saw Sargent's white 4-door Accord in the senior parking lot in Columbine High School in a line of cars waiting to leave the school soon after the shooting broke out. The investigative officers make a big deal about whether or not Sargent was in the car, a question Harmon was unable to answer. Wow, that's curious. So someone else could have had his vehicle? In light of the conflicting evidence, a reasonable person might craft a different version of events. That Sargent did indeed drive Zerger and Dickey to Burger King, but then jumped into his Blazer and zoomed down to Columbine High School with his posse load of Trenchcoat Mafia members to join in the assault. After 15 minutes, he rejoined Zerger and Dickey in his Honda, now in the senior parking lot. They got caught in panicked traffic and, cool as cucumbers, picked up Owens, Brunau, and Heish on their way out. I mean, that's I gotta say, that's a tall tale. That's a tall tale. Is that possible? I don't know. I really don't know. That would be totally mind shocking, and not necessarily to participate in the shooting, but maybe just to get a closer look, run around. Perhaps if all these people did have inside knowledge, perhaps they were fairly confident that Klebold and Harris wouldn't shoot them, and that they would be allowed to run around and just whatever. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's really crazy. So the Burger King is also interesting for other reasons. Trenchcoat Mafia member and Columbine High School dropout David Caravan, 6218, claims to have been at the same Burger King for lunch on April 20th with Jonathan Schlott, although Schlott doesn't mention him. That's curious. Trenchcoat Mafia associate Erin Adams says she was also at Burger King for lunch April 20th, but she doesn't mention the presence of any other members. Columbine High School student Jonathan Schlott was also at the scene for lunch with witness Hetzel. After being told what was happening a couple blocks from the school, Schlott immediately turned around and went home, document 7119. Why was his first interview at 2:24 p.m., April 20th at the Columbine Library? That's way early for Columbine High School students not at the scene, and right smack dab in the middle of his puny 2-page interview are these handwritten notes. This is Jonathan Schlott. White male, 16 to 18, looks like student, blue, ball cap, orange t-shirt, baggy pants. Number 2, khaki, fuzzy hair. Are these just misplaced notes, or does it have to do with something the way Schlott was dressed? Keep in mind that 4 or 5 witnesses describe a suspect in the cafeteria wearing a bright orange t-shirt, though some have suggested that the witnesses actually saw a brief glimpse of a red and yellow tie-dye shirt worn by suspect Robert Perry. 4. Landon Mark Jones, document 6698, was also at Burger King for lunch. He saw and heard nothing. Why did he feel the need to have an attorney be present when he was questioned by investigative officers? That's curious. And then again, maybe his parents were just the type of parents that always have an attorney for everything. Again, there's so many possible explanations here, but it is curious. It is curious if there were only people requested attorneys that didn't see or hear anything that were the ones that were at the Burger King. That's weird. And we did go over Stephanie Haney and a couple comments on the forum regarding Haney. Haney seems to be a witness that the investigators really wanted to shut up. Besides the info about Sargent, she also saw Harris and Klebold walking into the cafeteria with an unknown male wearing a white t-shirt just before the shooting started. She later identified the unknown male as an associate of Mark Maines. She received repeated visits from investigators until she finally gave in and told them she agreed that Harris and Klebold were the only ones involved. Another response here by Starviego. Haney likely saw and identified the suspect known as the white t-shirt bomber, which may be the same suspect as the Science Hall shooter. She was the only witness who was able to put a name to this person, who was probably not a Columbine High School student. So this man could have been the key participant along with Chris Morris. No wonder what she saw was so dangerous. It makes her the critical witness of the whole case. What's also curious is that in this interview with Chris Morris, this interview is no longer available, but from the transcript here, a police officer tries to correct Morris. Morris is talking about Eric Harris, and the police officer corrects him by saying, "Are you referring to Sargent?" Morris replies, "No, Brian Sargent is a geek." So supposedly the police are pursuing Brian Sargent as a top suspect during this interview with Chris Morris. And then who knows if Robert Perry turned himself in, gave him information, maybe multiple guys, maybe they convinced Robert Perry to get these other guys to turn themselves in exchange for immunity as well. Some other thing that's really funny, Brian Sargent says he doesn't know Dylan Klebold personally, and Zerger in page 7412 says that that Sargent, Klebold, and Zerger, they eat breakfast at McDonald's on a regular basis. Even though Sargent doesn't know Dylan, he eats breakfast with him all the time. Again, you really have to consider the individuals whose words you're taking on blind faith here. So there you have it. I mean, I will close with this image. I don't know who this is. I don't know if they have ever been identified. I will simply leave this image here for food for thought for both critical thinking conspiracy theorists and the Dunning-Kruger crowd, the coincidence theorists, who only want to indulge the propaganda of the corrupt on the idiot box and official narratives. Think about this. As always, plenty more to come. I mean, there are so many more accounts that we haven't even gone over. I mean, this is just scratching the surface, and we've already gone over nearly 100 accounts that don't match the official narrative. Now, of course, coincidence theorists will still maintain there's nothing to see here and hallucinate that all of these people are just mistaken. But it's weird. How come nobody was mistaken to cite other individuals other than these couple of Trenchcoat Mafia members? I mean, if the fog of war is that severe and these people are that stressed out, how come no other people were cited? I mean, it's just curious. How come no other students were mistaken? I mean, it's kind of like on 9/11 when the passports... the planes allegedly take down fireproof steel and buildings made to withstand these jumbo jets, and yet this jet fuel, which incinerated fireproof steel, just can't burn these passports, these paper passports. But that's the thing. How come nobody else's paper passports were recovered? Just the alleged terrorists. I mean, it's just curious. I mean, this is just curious. The coincidence theorists haven't been able to explain that. And again, with all of this supposed mistaken identity, how come nobody else? I mean, there's thousands of students at the school and nobody else was mistaken for a shooter. Isn't that kind of weird? I mean, only if you're using logic and reason, I guess. Plenty more to come, plenty more to go over. So stay tuned to the Columbine Conspiracy series on Mindshock. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. If you want to support the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. You could also become a YouTube member for exclusive content right here on YouTube, or you can support the channel by being a Patreon and head over to Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic, logical analysis, co-podcast, or requests. You could also be a guest in the podcast depending on your tier. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that bell for notifications. Also, like and share. Spread the word about logic and reason in examining all true crime cases, conspiracies, and various topics. Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Patreon. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys